C-151 Leaves out of a magical book. Take a leaf out of a book. Year 183, Part 2. The beetles stopped outside the tunnels. The place was unassuming, but the heroes could tell the presence of my camouflage and illusions abilities here. This looks like the perfect location for a trap, Chung said as he took in the tunnel. Kay nodded. That is the intention. Eon is located somewhere that's perfectly defensible. Prabhu just tapped Chung's shoulder. It's all right. We survived the Demon King's death bomb. We can take whatever this tree can throw at us. No need to be overly suspicious. Colette smiled. Let's go. I think it's fine for Chung to be suspicious. We can't all fall for the same trick, right? Hafiz just grunted and started walking. The tunnel was relatively short for them and they were out on the other side, and in my own personal valley. The home of my giant trees, and the still burning flames of the dark mana. These days they are a lot smaller, so it's just little embers, small flames that lit up from the branches. I liked the flames. It gave the valley a very unique look and feel. A burning valley, yet not hot because the heat had been transmitted outwards by my roots. Colette's eyes lit up. Oh, this is so. Anyway, the journal is in one of the trees. We won't be seeing Eon, not unless you guys want to. Kay said and led the way to the tree. The tree had a magical door, and they walked through to see the book. The book was a large tome. It grew slightly after Kay inserted her own memories some time ago. Well, it's here. All you need to do is touch it and it'll interact with you. It'll leave now so you can have your own time with it. The rest of the hero items are downstairs. The tree had expanded to have a few floors internally. The journal was first, the rest of the items left by the previous heroes downstairs. Chung held up his hand. I'll do it first. Prabhu shook his head. No, it's clearly magical, so I'll do it. Prabhu walked up and touched the journal and he just stood there. Prabhu. He just froze there. Chung immediately turned to Colette. Is he alright? He's alive, Colette said. There's a lot of magic swirling inside. Prabhu turned. I need a while. I need to process this. He magically moved a chair close and he just sat down, one hand on the tome. Just, relax. Colette, Chung and Hafiz shrugged and soon settled on the chairs and cushions in the tree. The entire area was decorated like a comfortable library. Prabhu just sat and closed his eyes. After an hour or so, he stood and turned. Yeah, I am all right now. You guys want to give it a shot? I need to pee now. What was it? Chung asked. It's like the condensed memories and personalities of the heroes before us, and their lessons. What they saw, what the gods said, what they've seen from the demons. It's just like a bit of everything. Even Keese in there. Chung nodded, and sat down where Prabhu sat, and he too touched it. He froze, and sat there for an hour too. At some point his face changed to show various emotions. Like pain, like sorrow. In the end he stood. I was wrong. Ken needs to see this. Chung looked at Colette and Hafiz who were both still waiting for their turn. Hell of a drug for it to change your mind. Colette looked at Hafiz. You think we can both touch the book together? Doesn't make sense that only one of us can touch it at the same time. Hafiz just nodded in agreement. He waited for Colette, and they both pulled a chair close and touched it together. Chung stood, and around the same time Prabhu came out of the washroom. Prabhu went straight for the snack bar at the corner. How did I miss the snacks? Chung rolled his eyes. Seriously, Prabhu, is it time for snacks when we just saw that? He pointed at the book. Prabhu snorted and started eating. Really? All I've seen made it pretty clear we're just pawns. May as well enjoy ourselves first. Prabhu munched. And I'll start with eating snacks when I want to. The archer merely rolled his eyes. From here, in the tree that held the journal, I could observe and listen into their conversations. The archer and the archmage took opposing sides of the snack-covered table. Chung just frowned. That's a very negative way of looking at it. Those before us clearly thought that way, though. Prabhu munched. Some of them descended into debauchery and having many lovers, perhaps as an act of vengeance. Chung's frown continued. It's just an excuse. The gods may have put us in a spot by giving us this shambolic hero role, but we are still responsible for our own actions. Not if they are clearly influencing our minds. Prabhu just kept eating. Now that we can step back and reflect on what we've been doing, we're pretty crazy. Young teens sent to another world on a mission to fight demons with superpowers. The way we are dedicated to that cause and kept on doing it despite the horrors we've seen, I am pretty sure the gods have a hand in it. All four of us didn't crack at the deaths or the horrors. I've seen so many mutilated body parts. Chung didn't seem to expect that from his compatriot. So the god's magical influence is clearly not just to make sure we do our job. It's probably to assist us to face the horrors of the world too. It hardened our senses, numbed us to death and gore. I mean, it does seem like the god's touch attempts to hammer these goals into our mind, and somewhat converts us into these robots. Okay, robots are a touch too strong. The gods make us obsessed with demons, and I see in our predecessors that they attempt to deal with that obsession with other obsessions and vices. I already see it in me, with snacks. Chung snorted. Does being an archmage make you so suddenly intelligent? Occasionally. I am pretty sure the system made me a mage because I am smarter than I look. And you're an archer because you're all tense and all that. Like a highly strung bowstring. You gotta chill, man. Fuck you. It got a laugh out of the archer. I am serious, Chung. The Demon King's dead, but with all that tension you are carrying, your muscles gonna knot itself up and choke you to death. The archmage handed him a bowl of snacks. It's deep-fried crunchy leaves coated with some kind of mixture. I probably should ask Lumuf to have a bowl one of these days, so that I know what it tastes like. There's always the next Demon King. That's like saying you statistically have a 0.0001% chance of dying when you take a bus. Which happened to us. Prabhu paused and realized he seemed to have said something stupid. You're right there. Chung took a bite this time, instead of abstaining. You know what? This is actually pretty good. I know, right? Prabhu nodded. But seriously, we need to do something. I mean, we know the Demon King can see us. They can see us once we have crossed a certain level and stuff. The Demon King will be hunting us. We could do what Kay did. Camp here, and if the Demon King comes for us, blow the shit out of it and then we land the finishing blow. Prabhu said. I honestly thought that was a very clever move. We engage in battle on our terms and stack the odds in our favor. But that means working with this tree. What's so bad about that? We're pretty much divine mercenaries. Ken seemed to think so, and now we know he's pretty much right. Chung paused. I should drop him a message. He activated a magical glowing ball, and spoke to it. Hey Ken, I know you're out there, but just wanted to let you know that we're safe, and we're on the central continent now. And you should get here and see this journal left by the old heroes. I think it's quite similar to all that stuff you've been talking about, that this whole thing is a ruse. The ball of magic transformed into a glowing arrow with a letter wrapped on it, and the arrow just whooshed into the Immaterium. Prabhu just smirked. We should ask Kay to come in. She saw this before. I think we should have our own discussion first. Just 4 of us before we ask her to come in. She was a hero, sure, but we're not sure how much her new form is subject to the control of this tree. You're implying she's not who she says she is. She could just be a golem of crystal combined with the copied memories of the real Kay, and the real Kay is long dead and we're dealing with essentially identity theft. Prabhu rolled his eyes. You're sometimes just a step away from being as crazy as Ken. I know. We are best friends, you know. Seriously. Colette and Hafiz were done too. Colette didn't seem particularly fazed, but Hafiz was straight out weeping. But they both soon collected themselves and sat with the other 2 heroes. Didn't take it very well, dude. Chung said. The knight or paladin, I wasn't sure what his exact subtype was, nodded. I wonder how Hafiz would stack up against Edna, and whether their powers were comparable. He let out a huge sigh. Bad. It's so bad. Colette could still smile though. Felt like I was in a movie, you know, like watching their lives flash by before me. I found it rather sweet that they took the effort to make this memento for us who came after them. It's a really good idea. Chung then asked. All right. Important question. Did you share your memories with the book? Hafiz, Prabhu and Colette nodded. Chung frowned. I didn't. Prabhu thought for a moment. It's okay. Not everyone should share, actually. It'll be a good thing to test whether this will have drawbacks. Chung nodded. Exactly. You're not stupid after all. Prabhu materialized a wooden staff and attempted to bonk Chung on the head. He blocked it with a wooden plate. The female archmage took a bite. All right. I feel we all need some time to digest what we saw today. So, let's just go check out the previous hero's items instead. It's just downstairs. They all nodded. Nothing much happened when they went downstairs. They were rather fascinated with the Harris-era items due to the summon mechanics it employed, and Keys Tower mechanics. We're like vanilla heroes. Prabhu complained. 2 archmages, a knight and an archer. Seriously. We're missing a healer though. Chung responded. Colette frowned. I feel like I am missing some context about all these game stuff you guys speak of. It's just game classes, Prabhu said. Kinda like traditional RPGs. She frowned. Traditional RPGs are weird. I only played a few mobile MOBAs, and they don't split classes this way. Prabhu paused. That's actually a good point. Guess this world gods are like from the older generation where their rules are more 3E than Mobage. They didn't take anything. Not yet. Anyway. They wanted to think about it a bit more, and the rules left by the previous heroes required them to essentially exchange their own hero-made items, or add their own, before they can take those made by the prior heroes. They returned to Freshka where Kay placed them in a nice inn. When it was late at night, Chung snuck out alone. Prabhu and Colette slept, while Hafiz walked the city alone. I followed them, of course. Chung ran all the way to an open field outside Freshka, where there's nothing but shrubs. Then he activated a set of skills, and then, activated a magical glowing ball, again. Ken, you there? He asked softly. He had a magical bubble that protected himself. Are you really safe? A voice was on the other side this time. Ken. I could still listen in, after all there were shrubs and grass all around, and he neglected to cover the ground. Yeah, it's quite safe here. No, it's so safe, it's jarring when compared to what we've seen the past few years. So, that book that you saw, I should see it. I think so. It's similar to what you talked about. I mean, they don't have your angle to it, but I think their perspective would be valuable. Think I can sneak in? With the right spells, probably. I'll make a hero item with a marker so you can find it. I see. Got it. How are the others doing? As you expected, they are taking this way too easy. No, actually, I am even surprised at how easily I am accepting all this. I knew those guys weren't entirely honest with us. Who the fuck gets Outworlders to do their dirty work if they have nothing to hide? If they are gods, they should have tons of entirely gullible followers to manipulate, so it didn't make sense at all why they needed us. Chung just nodded quietly. Where are you? You know I won't answer that. That book says that the Demon King can sense our star mana. When our levels cross level 100, the Demon King could probably sniff us out. I suspected that. The heroes and demons are opposite polarities of a magnet meant to collide. They must collide or they will mess things up. Chung sighed. So what do we do? After I saw that book, I am convinced you are right, but I don't see a way out of us. Not without dying. It says something that all previous heroes die, and I think we're meant to die. We're designed to die. We're essentially disposable band-aids. I feel we have two ideas if we don't want to die. Which is, get stronger and defeat the Demon Kings consistently. Chung stated the obvious. No. We know the gods tell us that the Demon King changes every time, and so, each Demon King will stack against us differently. I feel, we should figure out a way to trick the gods to summon more heroes. By letting them think we are dead. Chung paused. You mean like K, the golem? That's not my ideal result, honestly. I would like to keep my powers, not just retain a fragment of memories in some other form. Ken responded on the other side. We've got slightly less than 10 years to prepare, and personally, I want to know whether we can run away. If we do, or somehow vanish from the eyes of the gods, do the gods summon new ones? Chung looked around. It's dark in the middle of the night, but he's well covered with a heavy cloak. The wind was strong, but it didn't affect him all that much. Want me to look out for it? I am a mage too. I'll figure it out. You don't have to do this alone, you know. Chung said. I know, but I want some independence to pursue slightly more, unconventional ideas. Blood magic. Maybe. I'll let you know. Freshka. The heroes walked around and explored the city, and noted the presence of strangely modern facilities. Of all the cities on the central continent, Freshka is the most magically modern. There are magical equivalents of most common machines, like fridge, magical wagons and trains, magical lifts, with a healthy dose of trees between everything. Kay walked with them. There's a theater. Colette's eyes immediately honed in. What did they play? Anything from our world? Kay shook her head. Nah. The lords and nobles of this world love political drama, so the theaters here are more like episodic sitcoms. The nobles come to watch the writers of the imaginary story of nobility go through the challenges of life. Seriously. Colette frowned. The paying group are mostly wealthy nobles, and they have huge egos so they love stories about them, even if indirectly. Theater is something enjoyed by the elites, not the masses. Colette stomped her feet. Things like this really reminded me how horrible this world is. The other three boys chuckled. Dash. K. Brought them to one of the Valthorn-maintained segments of Freshka. She knocked, and led them to one of the houses that very much resembled a modern home. They saw a middle-aged lady sitting on the table. Astia, these are the heroes. Kay said to Stella. Heroes, this is Astia, she's from Earth too, but, as an accident. An accident. They met, and Stella gave a brief overview of how the accident happened. At this point, Kay is also aware of the frozen tree, but not aware of Arya's true nature as another accident. Edna and Lumuf wisely kept their mouths shut about Arya and Icebang. The discussion between the heroes and Stella was polite, and didn't touch on much. Stella did not mention her nature as a void archmage either, perhaps she thought they would have known, if they made any research. Well, at this point, this is it. Kay said. What do you mean? I've brought you here, and introduced the surviving Outworlders to you. You want introduce us to the tree? Chung wondered. Kay paused. You want to meet the tree? I mean, I could ask, but. Chung paused and looked at the other three heroes, they shrugged. Prabhu paused and then asked. Actually, we were wondering whether we could somehow cook up an arrangement like you. Me. Kay responded. No, I mean your strategy of softening the Demon King with traps and bombs. That's smart stuff. It worked because we could detect and pinpoint the exact location on the central continent. If the next Demon King doesn't appear on the central continent, that would not be possible. Kay said frankly. This detection ability, is it something that can be shared? Is it an artifact or a tool? The archer asked. I am not sure, but my gut feel it's something like Ian's own sense. If it is his senses, then it wouldn't work outside of the continent. Unless we move him to another continent. Prabhu said, and I mentally flinched at the idea. C-152 seeding the fields. Year 184. The heroes eventually left. Well, they split up, really. Prabhu, Colette and Hafiz decided to travel to the Northern Islands, and they wanted to do a world tour, at least before the next Demon King comes along. So, a few middle-rank Valthorns, in the level 60s were assigned to just bring them to the sites of the central continent. Like Keith's battlefield, and the Rotted Lands. And some other stuff like volcanoes, some beautiful beaches and reefs. But not in Reefy's area. That was a no-go. I did not want Reefy and the heroes to ever meet. Not now, not yet. Not when Reefy's still generally murderous. The archer hero, on the other hand, took a ship back to the southern continent. It seemed that he had other plans, and it involved some magical preparations. Throughout the entire thing, it seemed they remained oblivious of my ability to see them even from this distance. These days I feel that's truly my superpower. The ability of a massive hive mind of trees to watch the entire continent at once, so long as there is a tree or a grass or a bush present. The two archmages, however, were not exactly just having a holiday. They were brainstorming for some kind of an idea. Look, from what we see in the heroes' memories, there's clearly merit for preparations. All the heroes that fail do not prepare all that much. We must over-prepare for the next Demon King, even if its skill sets are different. So, I propose to build a super flexible arsenal. Prabhu spoke one day while they were touring the northern shores. They would sail to the other continent soon. All right, I am interested, go for it. Colette said. What do you have in mind? The Demon Kings have as many shots as they want at us, and they just need to get us one time to win. The demons bring an adapted arsenal each time, each more honed and better at killing us. Colette frowned. All right, spit it out. Hafiz clearly nodded at the other archmage's words. Prabhu simulated some kind of global map. We become weaker over time, especially during a battle with the Demon King. We also don't know where the Demon King will appear. So, my idea is, we need to have small recharging bases everywhere. Places where we can run to instantly restore our health, our star mana, and also equip ourselves with powerful gear. We need to build mini mechas for ourselves, with different weapon loads. And this will help us when we're outclassed by the Demon King. It'll make us more durable, and we can fight longer. Our levels are the main thing that we have that gives us a chance to survive. If we can gain more levels, we can live. We're still pretty soft. Hafiz said. We've seen how it took 2 shields to protect ourselves. Our hero items, for example, amplify our powers and make us stronger, and yet, our hero forge has odd limits. Like the size of our items, and the nature of powers that we can infuse into it, and how many functions. And, Colette was impatient. We need to find allies who can help us make superweapons. I was really tempted to tell them I am trying to do that too. But I suppose this is like being one of those old farts in a really big company watching a young one join the company and try to do something they've tried doing a long time ago. At some point, they'll probably lose track of all their names too. Especially when the names start repeating, because it's inevitable after so many generations that these hero names will start repeating. Maybe it'll get a Tiffany, or a Kason, or a Ray. And maybe a Mambo number 5. This is part of aging, right? As a tree, everyone and everything starts repeating itself like the seasons going through its regular cycles. Even the heroes are starting to feel same-ish. Like they start to fall into these tropes of the friendly one, the resisting one, the crazy one. Just rehash and remixed versions of the same few underlying components, at different ratios. The schemes too feel similar, and feel like something I am trying to do too. Like, the whole superweapons idea is essentially my own mini nuclear crystals. Dash. Greater than how do you deal with it, for things to feel like everything's meant to repeat itself. Less than I didn't know why that made me talk to lilies, but I suppose, it's life. Despite me, trying to hold on to life and meaning, I am cursed to watch things repeat. Because it is just how it is. I even feel like I had this question before. Greater than that's shit. Less than I mentally sighed. It tends to result in my branches and leaves swaying in the sighing motion. Even heroes with their unique powers eventually fall into types, and I wonder if I'm like a voracious light novel reader at the tail end of my journey, feeling like everything has been done before and nothing is fresh. Greater than a little bit. Less than I responded. I tried to remember that life has meaning, even if it's been done before. So what if all these people try to do the same thing? If it works, it works. Must every new hero attempt to change all norms? No. If the heroes want to try something that may work, then they should. Just because those before failed doesn't mean they can't succeed. I am at a different level now, and my powers to push the arc of the world grows with each level. If the heroes want a way to sufficiently deter the Demon King, I should assist them. Greater than do you bother doing the right thing? Less than. Lilies responded. Greater than at our levels of power, can we not resist? Less than. Greater than if you put it that way, why bother doing anything? Less than. Greater than I certainly don't see you as one of whims and fancies. Less than. Huh, so each of Lily's is a hive mind of different feelings. That was a long one from Lily's. This feeling of sameness. It's the forces of inertia trying to exert itself on me. Wait, how did I even get to this point? I felt like mentally slapping myself. Patrick, can you check whether I am alright? Any gods trying to meddle with me? No, Master. Strange. Why am I thinking such weird thoughts? Dash. The heroes clearly tried, and Kay volunteered to approach the local Valthorn's authority for some building permissions for the heroes' bases all over the world plan. So you're essentially planning to leave some kind of hero item in these locations? The Valthorns asked Kay. Yes. That's a strategic risk for us. What if they turn against us, or other heroes not aligned to us activate these hero items and destroy whatever that's around us? What if they use these locations as waypoints for their teleportations? They didn't do that with existing hero items. But these structures can be activated from afar. Lady K, you know very well that this is a strategic risk. The committee will not approve this, and you will have to go to Eon to get dispensation. But the heroes. This is something Eon and the High Council must decide. The Valthorn officials responded. Matters of strategic risk cannot be decided by provincial officials. Bureaucracy permeated the entire central continent, overseen centrally by my council and senior leaders. My artificial minds generally oversee the bureaucracy, though they are more concerned with threats, internal corruption and dissent. Then I will have to go to meet Eon. But the heroes are leaving soon. They can return once approval is obtained. Dash. My artificial minds helped to track the expected timeline of the next Demon King. It was relatively easy to do, now that my ability to view the astral star ways meant the timing was super clear. I could see them come, literally. They are at least 7 to 8 years away. That's good. The heroes still have a lot of time for their plots. Dash. Artie, Lausanne's human husband, passed away from old age. He lived a long life for a human, about 100 years, and already his lifespan was extended by his levels. He was in the early level 60s. Perhaps he would have lived a few more decades if he reached level 80s. They held a small funeral for him in Freshka, where his body was buried in accordance to a simplified version of Hawa's death ceremony. In the recent, later years of his life, his age really showed, unlike Lausanne, who was a pure-blooded elf. Lausanne even today looked only a little bit older than the day she left on her big journey around the world. Arlissa and Lauda too returned to see their father. Lofen, as the mother-in-law, also attended the funeral. About a week after, Lofen sat down with Lausanne. Do you regret it? Lausanne sipped her tea. I don't know yet. I remember telling you I wouldn't, but now that it happened, I am not so sure. Lofen merely held her daughter's hand. The thing about us elves is that when our children marry someone not as long-lived as us, we will often witness the aging and death of our great-grandchildren. Like Arlissa and Lauda, as half-elves they will live much longer lives, but eventually, they will die before we do. It is a very sad thing to witness our children's children and their children leave before we do. Lausanne just sat quietly, as she digested the gravity of the truth. But I believed in the beauty of the moment. It's something humans and those with shorter lives like the lizard people are incredible at. Their ability to throw caution to the winds and just be at the moment. Us elves and the tree folks too, have a distorted sense of time, and we worry too much about the future. Yeah, so, go spend time with Arlissa and Lauda. Lofen smiled. Lauda did not inherit her mother's love for spear combat. Instead, he was more of an academic, and reminded me of Roma, who's now a senior executive at one of the Central Continent's many trading companies. He hated her mom's dungeon expeditions, and preferred more leisurely pursuits like writing and arts. Preferably not both together. The two siblings, born so many years apart, did not see quite eye to eye. They were born in different times, and with different expectations. Lausanne at one point was rather stressed that she was one of the strongest in Freshka, but now, I had Edna, Lumuf and many others who are now stronger. Perhaps, it was the weight of duty, that is one of the strongest, she felt, even if a tiny bit, responsible to this nation that I built, and not free to live the life she wanted. In a sense, I believe I neglected what they wanted personally. That weight lifted, Lauda was able to grow up with a more confident, less stressed mother, and that too, reflected in how relaxed Lauda's disposition was, compared to Arlissa who was confused, easily stressed, despite her natural talents. Training people is really a gamble. They don't always turn out the way you want them to, and they often have plans on their own. This is something I concluded, and so the way I could maintain a steady talent pool, was to expand the talent pool, and keep looking. People like Edna, or Lumuf, young or old, so long as they had the drive and the spark, I was willing to give them a shot. Because I've seen many talents fizzle out after a good early run. Lumuf, as an example, was one of those old guys who had a second wind. Now he's the second strongest. Life was strange, and a lot of it required opportunity, drive, motivation, and the right mindset, at the correct time. Some of these talents had to be given time to stabilize, to mature on their own before they are ready to be pushed further. It's a numbers game, and also about spotting them as they rise up. Talent was something Freshka was dedicated to training. It was why I wanted all these different academies, to train different people for different things. But like Arlissa, it was also important to acknowledge those who had all the talent, were spotted and quickly groomed, but then just fizzled out. Some are like that. Perhaps something sniffed out the fire in them. Perhaps the comfy environment of the academies stifled them. That they needed to be out alone, struggling against the world to succeed. People who seem to have similar circumstances can perform wildly differently. Despite that, I still saw the merit of having a robust talent collection network. One Edna or Lumuf easily outweighs the cost of training 100,000 students who never get there. In truth, about 50 to 55% would end up as above average individuals in the level 50s to 60s. About 30–45% would drop out, usually plateauing at about level 40s, and a smaller 2–5% would rise up to about level 80s. This is despite these individuals already pre-selected for some talent. This also took years, especially with the 50 to 55% bunch. They worked hard, and had some talent, and yet the journey remained tough. Throughout the central continent we have multiple smaller academy towns. Feeder schools to train even younger kids in just basics, and recommend anyone with an iota of talent for further development. With the relative safety and prosperity of the central continent, especially in the past few decades, we noticed a subtle but soon noticeable decline in young children, and more young children pursuing more trade and mercantile exploits. As quality of life improved, it seemed that families were also getting smaller. I thought this was just a modern world phenomenon, but it seemed even in a world like this, generally improvements in living standards did lead to decline in childbirth. Which is extremely strange, and I needed to investigate more. There are clearly better facilities to support young children, and there are centrally funded nurseries and creches. And yet, families are just getting smaller. Year 185. I've got bad news, and good news. Bad news first, Stella said, concluding her years of experimentation into the tainted demon core. That tainted demon core you got, I am very sure it's busted. It's damaged and cannot be repaired, not with my level of ability. Not without causing a detonation. After multiple tests, I am sure whatever caused it is due to damage from an unwanted interaction with star mana. There were few really convincing scars throughout the core. I mean, it's not the first time she told me it's busted, but I requested that she did tests to be absolutely sure. It took a lot of time, of course, and I had to assist her over the past few years with the hybrid mana and supplied tiny bits of star mana. So, we have a dud. Confirmed. Now, the good news, from what I saw and can reasonably conclude, your idea that the demon core is a portal generator is very likely to be correct. From the internal structure and the design, I am now about 90% sure the demon core is a massive shielded void battery and portal key. There are some undamaged component elements of it that responded so naturally with void mana, and there were magical pathways that tried to access some records or pathways in an inbuilt library that's unfortunately mostly damaged. That explained the sensation that the tainted demon core wanted to do something, like starting a computer that had some hardware failure. It was accessing the still functional parts of the demon core, but unable to fully complete its startup. Stella, of course, knew I had earthly memories by now. It's pretty much like a starship's hyperspace reactor, stellar map and guidance module rolled into one. Alright. Very sure it's star mana damage. 99%. Stella said. So, if I want the demon's way of sending someone like the Demon King over, I'll need to kill a Demon King without using any star mana. Well, whether the Demon King is alive or dead doesn't really matter, isn't it? C-153 Northern Pre-Infestrations. Year 186. We hear stories of the heroes completing their tour of the Northern Islands. They spent close to half a year visiting various kingdoms and cities, and apparently created some defensive devices too. Then came the stories about assassins. The heroes were attacked by assassins armed with hero items. This wasn't in any of the official channels, but it was clearly noticed by my Valthorn's network of spies. So much so that one of the top spymasters came to me with a request to send more people to the north. You have the floor, Master Intip. The north has been one of the more difficult places to crack. The natural archipelago means news travels slower via conventional means, and magical messages are often disturbed by the magical winds. We face those challenges elsewhere. Lumuf responded. Certainly, islands and magical disturbances are not exactly uncommon. Indeed. But we're facing assassins. Already 10 of our informants have been killed, and our own agents are on the run. We need high-tier individuals in the north, not just the regular rank and file in the level 30s to 50s. At this point I asked, do we not have higher-level spies? Spies are essentially a thief and an informant. Their classes are fundamentally criminal in nature. The spies we have essentially recruited from the noble classes, who traditionally served their lords to spy on their neighbors. Internal disputes between my vassals, essentially. They die quickly, and often, so the good ones don't last very long. This was a flaw, clearly. I did not realize that my dependence on my trees as my main intelligence network meant there was no real program to develop my espionage and spy forces, even. If I could grant them higher ranked classes, they still need opportunity and challenges. But it's too late. I'll have to fix it for future conflicts. Alright, so what do we do now? We can send our higher leveled Valthorns in. Those in their early level 50s, and train them in some spy skills. Master Intip proposed. This would give our spies the combat competence needed if there's a fight with whoever's killing our informants. Edna paused. These assassins, are they related to the Laenza? K, who happened to be in the meeting? When I was there I encountered and engaged the services of another organization. The Rosewood Alliance. Master Intip nodded. The Rosewoods are one of my primary suspects, but we are still attempting to establish a motive. They've used to work with us, at least, on a lower level, but something has changed recently, and they've refused to talk. Those that we captured didn't say much, except they want work with us. Any suspicions? Kay paused. Is it because of the heroes? At that point, Kay repeated what her experience was, and what she said to the Rosewoods. The spymaster clearly nodded. I suspected it had something to do with our earlier mission, but we were not aware of the contents of that conversation. It's clearly something that should have been shared a lot earlier. The spymaster glared at Kay and Kay shifted uncomfortably. It seemed they already knew it's us, then, and also had something to do with the heroes. How does this tie in with the assassination attempts on the heroes? How did these group of assassins have hero items, and what are their motives? My sources claim it is an ancient feud. They are a cult of demonic worshippers that attempts to harness the demon's powers to bring salvation. That sounds really familiar. They are often mixed with those who used blood magic, but a few decades ago those who used blood magic separated from them, and they've pretty much disappeared for a while. But few know the truth. Edna frowned. If they have hero items they can threaten any of us. These hero items are not so easily found, so how did they get their hands on it? And hero items are all really bulky if they need to be recharged. This doesn't make sense. Lumuf repeated. If their goal was to annihilate the heroes all along, Alvin was there right for the picking. Edna jumped it. It's possible that there's another group, these Rosewoods, who are working against them. These two forces are battling it out in the dark. Lady Edna, are you speculating that the Rosewoods consider us aligned to these hero hunters? Possibly, but our past action of healing Alvin should clearly suggest we are not affiliated. At this point I jumped in. There's also the Lanza. What's going on with that? How many parties are at play here? The Lanza are more of a loose alliance of hero friends, but there are bad elements who've infiltrated them who are from these hero hunters. Our spymaster explained. They used to be more of a supporting cast, hoping to ally with the heroes for benefits should they survive, but they've weakened considerably after some bad bets. One of the lords stepped in. All right, the Northern Islands are a collection of small nations, the largest of them hold the biggest islands. Are they all pro-heroes? No. Some of them are outright anti-heroes despite being part of the four temples. There's an odd relationship where the temples tolerate their heretical behavior. And how do they get away with it? They justify it politically. That it's not a religious disagreement, but a political one. That they disagree on heroes on political principles. That kind of shit gets accepted. The ways the four temples blend propaganda, rhetoric and the twisting of words is quite an art form. The spymaster commented. Lumuf actually laughed. To be fair, as religious leaders, we are often asked to take sides on political matters. So many of the kingdoms and vassals of Eon had asked for special status and recognition in the name of faith. Alright, so what now? We need more resources in the north, correct? More firepower. But that doesn't solve our problem of lacking information and losing our network. Having the swords to back up our people is one thing, but these people were there for decades. One of the lords brought the conversation back on topic. Indeed. But it is the best we can offer at the moment. It is also a risk, because with hero items on the table, it is possible that these hero hunters may use them on us if they feel sufficiently threatened. Wait, let's take a step back. What are we trying to achieve in the north? Build a network of informants, in order to have valuable military and hero-related information. Keep ourselves informed on their movements, so that we can prepare for any unusual movements. Was this really necessary? Arya. I activated the ice mirror that linked me with Arya. Lumuf was present, so that I could speak through him normally. Do you have informants in the north? Nope. I am a hermit, remember. All I do is hide in my part of the world. I had hoped they had informants in the north, given her general proximity. Greater than only the tales of merchants and adventurers. Less than. Another rejected one. Is spying really the only way to gain information? Are there any nations in the north, with proper diplomatic relations that we can contact? That can act as our informant of the north. Surely there are magical solutions to this, perhaps magical farsight or something to that effect. My mages quickly commented. Yes, there are such spells to allow remote viewing, but they are costly and require more mana than normal. This led me back to my earlier research on ocean crossing routes. Previously I had limitations, in that my trees had to surface at certain distances. Given that there are vast swaths of oceans where there's absolutely no land, this made this method unrealistic. Next, was the idea with Stella, for a permanent portal. That meant opening a portal linking my continent and the north, and then, through that permanent portal, extend my trees to the north. Stella posited it is not yet possible, since she would still have to close the portal, and that meant large segments of my trees would be disconnected from the network. Was this really a solution, or just a stopgap? So, why do you want to open a portal there? Spread my trees. Having my trees there means I can access the magical energies there. I answered, ignoring that trees also extend my vision and intelligence network. Do you have some kind of magical feeler? Yes, pretty much. I wasn't lying. My magical labs are essentially magic sensors. Why not test it out? Stella proposed, and so she opened a magical portal, with the assistance of other young void mages. My roots went through it, and I could see a new place. I felt the cold, and my trees felt the chill too. A familiar sensation. Cold. I quickly spawned more trees, and Stella watched more trees appear along the path of my roots. The portal opened somewhere in the largest island in the north, but even so, the overall population of the islands tends to cluster around the coasts. I didn't know where I was relatively speaking. The portal just opened somewhere in the proximity of the northern islands, but I just kept expanding. Alright, close the portal. The portal closed and it severed my roots. I instantly felt the loss of those new trees on the other side. It hurts. Losing trees hurts. Ah, open it up again. Patrick immediately shielded me from the cries and sorrow from my other trees. It seemed that even till now, I am vulnerable to the sensations felt by my trees. Stella nodded and opened it up again. I sent my roots over, and didn't find the trees. It seemed that my portal drifted and did not open in the same place. Stella mused and the other void mages joined in. That's not good. Unless we have something like a beacon, it may be hard to lock the portal to a specific location. Void magic is inherently volatile like that, but the portal will hold. Can't you open a normal portal? I only have void mana, you'll have to get someone else to do it. I gathered the archmages, and they commented that maintaining a long-term portal would drain huge amounts of mana, so it's not feasible for them. Surely if Stella can do it, you guys can open a portal too. Well, it will consume more mana and will transmit our presence to the whole world. Oh, that's a distinction between a normal magic portal and a void magic portal. Void magic is imperceptible to others. Which, then Stella quickly debunked. Not exactly. I can sense the use of void magic by my students. If I am not wrong, if there's someone who could use void magic, they would sense my portal on the other side. After all, I am doing the magical equivalent of connecting to points through the void space. So no one uses portals to invade because using portals is like telling the whole world I am here. But how does a portal differ from a teleport spell? I mean, it looks like there is, but is there? A portal is a folding of space. A teleport is a folding of self into a shell, and then sent through space. There's a distinction in the execution of the spell. An archmage explained. Taking this concept, do the demons open a portal through the rifts, or are they teleporting to our world? A portal for sure. Those rifts are portals. If the demons can do it, why can't we? We don't have their level of magical understanding. Stella said. She's been leveling up since her limiter was cleared, and now she is approaching level 110s. I gave her special permission to join the Valthorns in the level 120 dungeon raids, to help her level up. Alright, okay. Can we apply the teleport concept to traveling through worlds? Stella nodded. I am not opening a portal when I travel through worlds. I am only floating through it on a little ship. But I can't remotely send someone on my ship, when I am not on it. Unless we teach everyone to be a void mage. Well, yes. Alka, my field scientist, wanted to experiment on the star mana and void mana interactions. Of course, the idea is simply to replicate the mechanics of the Demon King's Death Bomb. Alka, being more of a generic mage, had to spend a lot of time figuring out how the Demon King's tainted core worked. He had to make smaller experiments first, in an attempt to understand the concepts used in the massive tainted demon core. Not all of it was relevant. After all, if Stella's understanding is correct, this core is mainly a battery, and also a world portal. We're trying to understand how it reacted with star mana, which is not part of its original design. Or is it? I am not exactly sure whether the demons are that deliberate in the way they engineered the demon core, such that they blow up on exposure with sufficient accumulated star mana. If this core is designed to blow if star mana hit it, then wouldn't it be possible to just hit it with star mana, cause it to blow up, and take down the Demon King with it? We saw from our own earlier battle that the demon core is hidden somewhere, and has a threshold it hits before it blows. It can endure a certain number of star mana before exploding. Or the Demon King's own energy regulates and suppresses the core from blowing up. Kay retorted. If so, the idea of extracting a Demon King's core is probably futile because it will blow up once taken out of its suppressed state. With no one to ask, and no clear understanding of how the entire core worked, it's a risk we would have to take when that day comes. For now, Alka kept experimenting. Hopefully, with the additional knowledge, we could figure out whether it can be safely extracted. His experiments, as always, caused explosions of various sizes. Explosions are good, after all, this entire research is about making better bombs. It built on years and years of continuous experiments, even when I wasn't particularly paying attention, and he came up with bigger stuff. Bigger, stronger bombs by weaving magic a little tighter, timing them a little closer, and using improved amplification spells and designs. A long process of small incremental changes. Void magic and the interactions with star mana offered a chance for a quantum leap. The change when man moved from conventional explosives to nuclear bombs. Alka's initial experiments, though, somehow scared him. The way star mana and void mana interacted was just naturally explosive, and there was something exponential at work, even if we didn't understand it. This may destroy the world. Alka privately relayed his worries. We should never get to that point. Alka's calculations, at least based on our data points, that amount was significantly higher than what we think the heroes are likely to have, but we don't know what's the upper limit of the heroes. But they could achieve it. The heroes, and the right amount of void mana could pretty much destroy the entire world. I would not ask you to get there. Our goal is to end the cycle, not end the world. Alka nodded, and went back to his experiments, but Patrick mentioned concerns of his mental state, as he walked ever deeper into more and more complex magic. Back on topic on the Northern Islands. So what do we do? One of the lords complained of the 6th meeting about the North. We've had so many meetings, and no conclusion. Are we sending muscle, or are we not sending muscle? I thought we already established we are going to send, but we are now trying to figure out how to avoid hero items being used against us. Another one responded. The spymaster shrugged. The hero item is essentially a great leveler for the North. On the central continent we can count on Eons' overwhelming power to offset the hero item's advantage. I could open portals, but already, I could sense my power projection is not great. The portals did not transmit power very well, quite unlike the demonic rifts. There clearly was a qualitative difference in the demonic rifts and the portals. Why did the rifts allow me to transfer or project power to an entire world with just a small loss, but the portals imposed greater power loss via transmission? Was it a quality of the portals, that they had lower throughput? I brought up this issue to the group, and Stella, surprisingly, nodded. I think it's just the size of the pipe. As you know, portals cost mana to maintain, and the more power you push through the portal, it'll also cost mana. Just as how it cost a lot of mana for me to send Lumuf to the other side. I believe the same as with the portals. So if you open a full-powered portal, I could increase the power output on the other side. Theoretically, yes. A test soon proved it to be true. He felt the trees on the other side gained strength they didn't have, but again, the portal lasted 2 hours before closing, and fully consuming the mana of all the gathered void mages. Instead of using the portals, I thought about Lumuf. Lumuf was my avatar and my link of power through him is linked in the system. Could he function as a conduit? A wireless connection. So, I summoned him, and sent him through a portal. Thankfully, it's still within the same world so the spell didn't cost all of their void mana. Then, I activated the active avatar state. At that moment, Lumuf, who was alone in the middle of nowhere, glowed, and then he levitated, and a magical frame resembling a tree appeared around him. The roots of the magical tree embedded itself into the ground. I am now in the north. Lumuf could only enter into this state a third of the time, the rest of the time he would have to rest. But between Lumuf's self and the portals, I could theoretically use Lumuf as an anchor to send more people through, especially in combination with my Vine ropeway network which allows me to send anything between 2 connected trees. Eon, with this, you could theoretically invade any of the other continents. Lumuf mentally pinged. In this state our conversations are through our shared mind. Indeed, but doing so means you are disabled and are locked into this tree form. It is less useful than your normal form. I certainly don't see it that way. We could use it on other worlds too, and expand your tree's reach there. Indeed, Lumuf would be the key in any demon world invasion, such that I do not have to fear the collapse of any portals. Back to the meeting. Send the muscles. You will have reinforcements. I declared to the group. Lumuf is already in the north, and through him, my presence will be there. We will focus on those plans some other day, but for now, it's time to crack the north. After decades of being locked to the central continent, it was time to make full use of my avatar, and infest the north with my trees. C-154 Treatise of Ava. Year 187. The north was a chain of islands, but that honestly didn't stop me. It seemed that no one sensed Lumuf's presence, well, except Arya and Icebang. You're in the Northern Isles? They asked through the mirror. Yes, through my avatar. My trees gradually expanded, and I added artificial minds to support the amount of monitoring. Here, I detected a second barrier or bottleneck. There was a limit of how much information that Lumoof can send and process. It's still a decently high limit. We could simultaneously look at about 20 places, and I couldn't switch views instantly. That meant there was still value in having a real root connection. Somehow, all of this information flowed through Lumoof, and it taxed his mental capacity heavily, even with the assistance of the extra minds. A person, even if he was a high-leveled avatar, was not meant to be full-on God mode. My trees spread discreetly. They adapted to the appearance of the local flora, and my trees spread quickly. At first, a lot of it was just pointless chatter. We had to filter that out. It occupied too much of Lumoof's brain time. I tried creating an artificial soul there, through Lumoof, but I couldn't send the souls I gathered here to Lumoof. That said, Lumoof was in fact a portable soul collection machine with the avatar ability. This meant, if he fought with the heroes, he could actually facilitate the gathering of Titan souls. Yay. He's like a massive soul vacuum cleaner, and he's collecting the north. Come to think of it, do you collect souls? I asked Arya and Icebang. After all, they are spirits in their own way. No, not our department. Arya responded. Then where did all the souls in the north go? Surely they must go somewhere, or did they drift along? I tried using my soul powers to interrogate the collected souls. This power was rarely used because when I could see and eavesdrop on almost the entire continent, that was a much more reliable information source than interrogating the dead with their incomplete memories due to death. After all, incomplete information without context can be dangerous. Still, in the north, I needed to quickly gather information, and soon I chanced upon the dead souls of two operatives. Kill. Hero. Why? Hero. Enemy. Mission. Rewards. Dead. So there's a reward if the hero dies. What kind of reward? Big money. Levels. Special. Class. A special class for those who killed heroes. That actually makes sense. Power. Immortality. That's awfully vague. Lumoof remarked mentally, as he too was a participant in my interrogation of the dead. Even if they had pointed us in a direction. I faintly recall killing heroes results in a curse. But only if they were killed before their designated demon king perished. Thus, for this generation, they are all targets. That is probably also true, but worth it. Given the risks, the rewards should be fairly good. If so, surely there must have been successful hero killers in the past. If there were, they managed to hide themselves from the historical records available to us. But then again, why do I need records when I have Lilies and Arya? I quickly asked the two about whether they know of the hero killers. It was a no from both of them. Lilies commented that they have never met hero killers. Surely there are people who killed heroes, even if entirely by accident. It can't be that the heroes are so lucky, right? Or they are. It's not easy to kill heroes, though. Kay frowned. We're pretty tough once we hit level 100. We get all sorts of natural defensive perks, and most of us have abilities to ignore low-level damage. We're also usually immune to one or two elemental types which we are aligned to, and we get most status effects negated. Most. I wondered. It's possible for a hex bomb to kill you. Kay shifted uncomfortably. Well, yes. A hex bomb would be bad. Wait, are you saying there's a plot to use hex bombs to kill the heroes? We need to warn them. They may not be aware of hex bombs. I am sure they are. They've seen the journals. No. I retorted. Harris generation faced hex bombs in a world riddled with hex bombs as a demon champion countermeasure. We're lucky those days are over. Dash. The first of the Ava triumvirate arrived via ship. They were led by one of the triumvirs, Grandmaster Enka, and they came in one of the finest ships we've ever seen. A beautiful warship of a glistening paint of gold and bronze, and loaded with magical enchantments. Accompanied by a small delegation of Ivan Templars, his arrival was a secret, of course, but everyone noticed the presence of a warship like that. Not a hero item, but very high quality as they go. It's been in their care for centuries, and painstakingly maintained, even if their craftsmen and ship workers couldn't quite repeat the mastery of the ancient times. Lausanne explained her experience, and she was one of those tasked to greet the triumvir. The ship was parked in one of the larger port cities on the eastern coast. Nice to meet you again, Lady Lausanne. Enka gave a small nod as he stepped off. It seemed that Eon truly meant business. Lausanne didn't quite smile. It's been a while indeed, though I must admit I accepted this assignment at great reluctance. Allow me to introduce the officer in charge of the escort. Enka laughed. Still bearing old grudges, I see. There was something faintly divine in his presence. To my spirit sight, it seemed like there's something else swirling with him. This is Lord Johann, the Master Ranger in charge of your security. Lozan introduced. Johann outranked Lozan as he's in the level 120s, and was fully informed of the greater details of the visit. Though the Ivan Templars had their own escort, we were not taking chances. Already their arrival sparked rumors, and I had my artificial minds on high alert. There were secret messages bouncing between the locals and people from out of town, and then ships headed our way. I see it'll be in good hands. Enka smiled. The Templars unloaded crates after crates of items. The dockworkers quickly loaded them on the beetles, the specialized transport for this visit. These were some of the toughest beetles yet. But tell me, are we expecting company? Lozan glanced at Johann. Johann merely smiled. No. But we are prepared. A few of the higher-ranked rangers were also nearby, shadowing their movement. They are there for security, and to catch anyone who takes the bait. My spirit vision sensed some unusual magic in those crates. Things that felt similar to that log I had, but different. Enka himself also had some interesting magical gear, and I sensed at least 2 hero items on him. If they were so small, this meant these were either single-use items, or hero items made for normal people. Well, let's get moving. Johann said, and a few administrative team members sorted the Templars to their respective caravans. The chatter in the background was intense, as many soon asked why were the Ivan on the central continent. We were expecting company soon enough, as my magical sensors detected uncommon types of magic activating across the continent. The agents planted are finally moving, and my minds were watching, marking. Spies from the other temples, the Laenza, some of the southern kingdoms. And secret requests to the assassin guilds throughout the central continent. Sadly, they were all met with a swift rejection. The guildmasters of all these assassin guilds had an understanding that their presence was merely tolerated so long as no Valthorns were targeted, and they had sufficient brain juice to not interfere with my things. Those old enough to remember my punishments decades ago would know better. Still, with the guilds themselves staying away, these foreign players directed the requests to the assassins personally with hefty rewards. The smarter ones know better than to accept. Even if they succeed, they know they can't escape. But there are always fools tempted by the huge sums of money. I view this as a net positive. My Valthorns may be high-leveled, but they do need anti-assassins practice. And a good reminder to those who have forgotten. The memories of men fade so easily. How have you been? Enka asked as Lozan sat in the same cabin. It's a large, lush and well-furnished cabin similar to the ones used by the heroes. It's been decades. Much better now that I am no longer running demon hunting missions. Lozan responded. There's no need for that bitterness, is there? Enka smiled. I am after all here at the invitation of Eon itself. So, how much do you know? Lozan smiled. Not much, but I don't mind. It's better when I don't get involved with your business. I am here merely at Ian's behest. He figured that you'd enjoy some banter. Enka laughed. True. The matters of the Triumvir are never simple. That is a wise choice, a wise choice. He then looked at Johann, who was on a lookout. The caravan of 100 beetles passed through the valleys, and were soon closing in on some patches of forests. My artificial minds pinged that some assassins were going to strike there. I waited, and let my Valthorns do their work. They have to detect their presence themselves, and Johann made some hand signals. A few of the subordinate rangers fanned out. Enka looked at Lozan again, as he watched the rangers. I must say, Ian's ability to cultivate talent is truly second to none. I would trade my hero items if I can convince some of your rangers to serve me. I'll even accept you. Lozan responded. No thanks. The Ivan is really short of capable, high-leveled folks. Surely Eon can share. No. I can count the number of level 70s we have in one hand. That's how bad we have it. A little bit of pity. No. And certainly that's not something you should be revealing so casually. Lozan seemed to have some bad memories of the man, and I wonder whether it was a mistake to get her to be the liaison. She didn't reject it, though. Enka laughed. Oh, anyone level 70 and above serving for the Ivan Church is a public figure through and through. You even met them. Lozan didn't reply. The caravan now took the roads through the forests. The assassins struck. The Valthorns intercepted. They were slightly slower to pick them up. The assassins were quite low-leveled, some in their level 30s. A few of the assassins backed off, deciding that it wasn't worth it once they saw who they were dealing with. Those who went for the attack found arrows lodged in their heads within seconds. Operatives hired by groups unknown. Do they always try to kill you? Lozan asked. As you should know, I have many enemies, and I believe most of those who try to kill me are my allies. The caravan would take 3 days to cross the continent to reach Freshka. Dash. The Ivan Triumvir is here. Kay stormed and asked Edna one day. She didn't know until the caravan moved. Why? Edna paused, and obtained my permission to tell her. Because they reached out to us, for a ceasefire. An alliance. No. My sources tell me the entire Triumvir will be here. They never meet unless something of divine importance. Edna nodded. Yes. It is of divine importance. What is Eon trying to do? A talk with a god. The truth to whether there is a way to end this. Kay stared at Edna, her mind spun as she processed it. I want to be there. Very well. Dash. Diplomatic messages and secret messages flew across the world, as they speculated about the Ava's intention. The other 3 churches were particularly tense and they sent strongly worded messages to Enka. Enka smiled when he received them. Isn't this amusing? Lozan shrugged. The Gaian master of the temple just demanded that I clarify my presence on the central continent. I got similar messages from the Hawa and the Nera too. Pathetic, when all of us together couldn't even muster a force to stand up to Eon's overwhelming power. Are you here because of power, then? My personal stance on this, yes. We are weak, and we acknowledge that. It's especially clear now that you could invade the eastern continent and win. That just makes me even more suspicious of your presence. Lozan responded. Dash. The caravan arrived in Freshka safely. There were a few more smaller assassination attempts, but nothing too big. The caravan of beetles were led to a special clearing site made at their request. The crates were unloaded, and the Templars started work. We had mages, builders and crafters on standby to make any structure or amendments to the site as required. They built a circular temple with a central clearing, and I will speak through Lumuf. I would have to stop my northern observations for this, but I will do so once they are ready. The other 2 triumvirs? Edna asked. They will be summoned here. Enka showed a magical ring. This is the ring of the triumvirs, and allows me to summon the others here. They walked to my valley. Edna was with him, and she was fully armed in her best equipment, just in case. Enka bowed before my massive tree. I could see his legs shiver, and he seemed pale. I had doubts, but now I do not. Greetings, Eon. Speak. I will commence the ceremony of the heavenly gate, to open a means to commune with our god, Ava. 3 of us will be there to keep the gate open, and we will sacrifice 3 divine items to maintain it. But once commenced, we will be very vulnerable, and will require your protection. You have my word. Indeed. I had the entire area on lockdown. Who dares to mess with my ceremony? But that's not the main point, really. We have never performed this ceremony, and we only learn of it now. Could you ask a question on our behalf? I wondered what it could be. Why are we left to die? Enka said. Dash. The site was ready, 3 hero items in the middle, filled with star mana. Enka twisted his ring, and his ring glowed. For a moment, I saw with my astral sight the world momentarily twist, and then, 2 others appeared. Grandmaster Amdar, Grandmaster Mianas, let us begin. They both looked around and noticed that everything has been prepared. They sighed and nodded. They formed a triangle. The floor has already been marked. There were runic formations on the floor that I did not recognize, and it seemed that this was new to the Grandmasters too. No matter. They started chanting, and the strange energies within them, however minuscule, vibrated and then glowed. This was entirely invisible to everyone else, only visible in the spirit vision. It shone out and linked together, and then the 3 items burned, melted, and transformed into a levitating blob of the night sky. Lumuf had been called back, and he waited. I would activate the avatar if needed. Still, I early summoned Stella to watch on a hunch. Then we saw it. The blob twisted, and a door opens in the astral starways, so small and tiny. A light reached out, a stringy light crawled out, and then the front bulged into a wisp. The string was still there, present. At that moment, the entire world felt it. It was an oppressive feeling. Everywhere, even in the further towns, people were vomiting and some fainted. Lilies spoke through the roots. I would reply later, my focus on the ball of light that stood before Lumuf. Lumuf and Edna was unfazed, their domain protected them and allowed them to stand. Kay fainted briefly, but quickly caught herself. Stella, strangely, only vomited. The wisp formed into a face. Greetings, Eon. I go by my names across the many worlds I touched, but here, I am Ava, and long ago, Diyar. My time is limited, my true self many worlds away. Let us speak quickly. Greetings. I spoke and saw through Lumuf. You have questions. Quickly. Ava asked. The time we have for this gate is short. How can we stop the demon kings and end this cycle of destruction? At this point, this was really the main thing on my mind. We don't know. We have tried, destroyed some demon worlds, but we failed in the end. The demons are infestations of corruption. They can be delayed, they can be defeated, but they will eventually return. They are drawn to the worlds of the living, but more importantly, they are drawn to us, the gods. They have a vendetta against us, and we fight them across 1,000 worlds. They find your world through the remnants of their champions, and also, so long the world lives, they seek to corrupt it, and eventually turn it to a demon world. So long as a world lives, they will look for it. Each demon world weakens us all. Can we hide the world from them? The wisp paused. Possible, but not something I can do. Quickly. Next. Good. That's something I'll figure out then. Why do the gods attack me? I speak not of the others, but we often mistake native powers as nascent demonic presence. It is hard to tell what is a corrupting cancer, and what is a robust defense from where we are, our knowledge and information distorted by void, distance and limited perspective. I sensed some demonic energies in you, but am relieved that you remain the master of them. So many worlds lose the ability to defend themselves from the demons, the body weak and in need of external assistance. Can you call them off? We needed a united front. I will try, but they are far away. Ava responded. Why do you control the heroes? This was something I wanted to ask for a long time. The wispy face bobbed. Oh, well, the medicine must do what it is meant to do. Strong medicines can often damage and harm the flesh, and so, they must be controlled. We cannot inject medicine and then hope that the medicine will find its own target. We tell it what to find, and mark them such that the demons are drawn to them. It is a balancing act. If we inject too much medicine in the patient, we may damage the flesh more than the demons. Fuck. The heroes are nothing more than tools. I felt something attacked my domain, like something was scanning me from my leaves to my roots. I felt something stir in the distance, my magical sensors started to ring. Edna, Kay and Lumuf seemed to take it quietly. Why let them die? Because even gods could not be everywhere at once. Our powers are strongest close to us, but the great void of time pushes and pulls on many worlds, and this world has drifted on the void sea further and further away from my sphere of power. It is a great relief to see a native god emerge at long last, however weak you are now. Take my followers, and they shall treat your word as my own. Wait, Your Eminence, are you sure this is a good choice? One of the triumvirs could not help it. He had to ask. I don't blame them. Ava's magical face turned to face the 3 triumvirs who struggled to maintain the spell. Yes, I am too far to properly protect you. I will repeat. Eon shall take my followers. That includes all of you. Ava's floating face responded and the 3 triumvirs shook. I have enough to protect. Seriously, I already have a continent, but then again, if I am going to end this cycle, I do need more. As you grow, you'll have the capacity for more. The distance between us in this great void continues to grow, and it is an eventual fact that one day, my powers will no longer reach this world. It is far more just and fair for me to say truthfully, that my powers wanes in this world, and better for those who believe in me to seek an ascendant pantheon for protection. The triumvirs could not respond. I had another question. How long do you have? Will you still summon the heroes? Ava paused. Perhaps a century or 2, much depends on the flux of the void. An ancient pact binds us, the old gods, to defend these worlds. We have to, even if we don't want to. There was a shocked look on the faces of everyone present. What pact? It's complicated. You will know once you ascend. What are you? Like what are the gods? Where are they? We were once like you, though our paths meandered in different ways. Time is running out. The blob was shrinking. But here, a small parting gift from me. From a predecessor. Good luck and goodbye, Eon. I, for one, eagerly await your ascension to the divine realm. We are weary from the eons of war, and we could use some new hands. One not bound by the ancient pacts. The blob of light flashed and entered Lumuf. I felt a bolt run through the link between me and Lumuf. You've gained 2 levels. You are now level 199. All tree-type laboratories upgraded. Whoever wanted to interrupt us was too late, and it seemed a familiar weapon was used against me. A hex bomb. It flew from the south, but it was small, probably hastily gathered. I activated multiple shields to block it, and the bomb was stopped even before it got near the valley. The blob was gone, and the runes vanished. The 3 triumvirs collapsed, exhausted from the gate. Kay looked at Stella. Holy shit. Everyone in the world breathed easier, as the divine presence vanished from the world. C-155 Steering Committee. Year 187 continued. The triumvirs heard it from their god, and they were honestly lost for words. How do they even explain that the Ivan Church will now be assimilated? Do the prayers now go to me, instead of Ava? There was a lot to think about. Edna and Lumuf's first comment was, a true god is incredibly intimidating. They had not felt such a strong sensation. Already, messages were flying everywhere throughout the world, requesting for information on what had happened. Indeed, I now understand the huge gap between our power. If the levels each resulted in an exponential bump in power, perhaps the gods would be someone in their level 300s. Or maybe 400. The triumvirs of Ava were incredibly puzzled and distressed. We must discuss this. None of you leave, I said to everyone present, including the triumvirs. A cage of roots emerged around the entire area, and coated it with all the anti-magic aura. And no messages. Everyone nodded. First, I want to hear everyone's thoughts. What do you think of assimilating the Ivan faith to ours? The triumvirs were at a loss for words. I need a lot more time to process this. It is too sudden to find out that our God has decided to abandon us. The problem of assimilating, no, taking over the Ivan faith is a lot more complicated than it seemed. If I could nod, I would. Indeed, and has such things ever happened in the history of the world? Lumuf could answer that. No. In our records so far, that has never ever happened. I looked at Kay and Stella who were both present. I spoke as if I wasn't one of Earth because the triumvirs were present. Both of you came from the other worlds, and have seen similar schisms in faith. Surely your histories would enlighten you the moments where a faith or a temple is torn apart due to differences. What happened then? Stella was the one who answered. She was after an adult when she came, so she had a more thorough education on the histories of Earth. War. Civil war. I ask of you three, and of your knowledge of your priests, and your people. Do you think they will accept an outright conversion to my faith so easily? The three triumvirs all shook their heads. Enka was the one who stood to respond. No. Many have believed in Ava for years, decades, perhaps even centuries. So many priests preached of Ava's greatness and kindness, of Ava's powers, of Ava's sense of duty to our world. I am afraid that what that lady said was true. If we were to follow what Ava willed of us, the Ivan Church will break apart. No. I am convinced that they will go to war against us, even if we are the triumvirs. Indeed. Exactly. This message, if spoken, the other priests of your faith would say all of you have been corrupted, your minds altered by my powers. You three will be hunted and killed. The three triumvirs could imagine it already. Such a message could never be accepted. What Ava asked was for his followers to abandon what they have known their entire life, and I saw that it was impossible, even if his logic had a sense to it. Stella looked at the triumvirs, and then back at Lumuf. Eon, what are you proposing? We say nothing of what Ava had said. Everyone gasped. I asked that everyone present to seal those divine words in your mind. The triumvirs looked at Lumuf, but your God commanded you to obey me. And my first order is for you to keep everything that happened a secret among secrets. We shall maintain our separate faiths, and the Ivan Church will continue. Let no one, other than your successors, ever learn of what Ava has said. One of the triumvirs immediately kneeled. Thank you, Eon, for your wisdom. The other two immediately followed. Ava may desire that I take over, but it is not in my interest to do so. I have no desire to wage war against the Ivan Church, and have no need for the Church's followers. The central continent continued to grow, and I wasn't about to just accept the shit that this god decided to throw my way. But we will have peace between us, and in the future, friendly relations. But I may have requests for you, that I hope you will assist me to carry out. The three triumvirs nodded. That should be fine if we keep it discreet and find ways to establish a secure communication channel between us. A ceasefire and a peace treaty should not be an issue either. I saw so many potential pitfalls in absorbing the Ava faith, and already the world has lost enough. It doesn't need another crusade, one triggered by the supposed capitulation of the Ivan faith. Those who believed did not see reason or arguments, and people will act based on their feelings and their conviction, even here. When religions back home broke apart due to fundamental differences, it always led to war. We don't mind wars. We even allow wars between our vassal kingdoms. But the Ivan War has the potential to trigger serious questions of the possibility of the faiths coexisting peacefully, and it would be a war aimed at me, and it would be a war we don't need. No, more importantly, I did not want what I am implying should I absorb the Ivan faith, a similar fate awaited the other three temples. I want my faith to be one that can coexist with the other four, and that we can all work together. I also saw problems even if they did accept my faith. I was limited by the natural geography of the world, and so, even if they believed in me, I wouldn't be there to protect them. It would not be fair for the triumvirs either, when they would have to defend my cause, and the only way I can do so is to send my Valthorns across the sea and fight a war. Not until I figure out how to properly cross the oceans. Using Lumuf as an avatar is like a stopgap, and I would like a far more permanent arrangement. One of the triumvirs apologized. I had not expected Ava to escalate from an alliance to an outright absorption of our faith. At this point, what is the sense among your people? Would they accept an alliance? Honestly, it's a mix. Many admire the strength of the Aeonic faith, and the powers that backed it. But out of principles and loyalties, many prefer to remain with the other three. An alliance may also trigger some dissent, though I expect it to be more mild. That said, it would be riskier for the Ivan believers on the other continents where the other three temples are stronger. Then we shall not rush into it. I decreed. Let us have peace, and we shall be friends. Allow our forces to travel to kingdoms who follow your faith. Perhaps in time, an alliance will be a natural evolution from friendship. I have the time to play the long game, and there was no need to rush things and create so much bad blood. A war won by friendship will last longer, anyway. The triumvirs returned to their temporary lodges, relieved. They would have a lot to figure out, like how they plan to secretly tell their successors. The words of their god by convention was to be recorded in a magical item, and so they had to keep it safe. I made sure they all received a familiar from me. I turned to Stella. You saw it, right? Yes. The pathway through the stars, that temporarily bridged this world, and the world where Ava resides. I didn't think that the temples had a way to open the pathways of the stars too, and it used a different mechanic compared to void magic. Good. I believe this means all the four temples must have some variant of such summonings or meetings with their gods. It makes sense that it is not widely known, after all it communicates with their god, which can be very, very far away. Stella paused and looked at Lumuf strangely. What are you implying? We need to gather all of the methods, and figure out how they work. So, I'll need a team of infiltrators to sneak into the secret temples and libraries of the other three temples, and get those information. For Ava, I could simply just ask them to give it to me. After all, I am now de facto owner. The puppet master behind the strings. Oh no. Stella was horrified. Looks like I must take training spies and infiltrators much more seriously now. Edna and Lumuf merely smirked. A proper raid on the temples of the other three. Not just that. We must first find where such information is kept, and who would have it. Don't worry, I believe this will be a long process. For now, you may focus on studying the techniques used by the Ivan Church. The triumvirs gladly parted with the techniques, after all. I needed spies and thieves. A lot of them, and I needed them to be good at what they did. I have the ability to create higher tier classes for spies, but ultimately, spies gain levels by doing spy stuff. This meant sneaking into places and taking on roles where they are in real danger. As it is, we have spies who are doing missions in the other nations across the oceans, but the survival rate is pretty low. They usually die when caught. We could give them the court of the TreeTree. Patrick suggested. But the slots are limited. That would mean we could recall them if they are ever caught, but that didn't feel like it would work. I decided to go back to my dungeon creation ability, and tweaked it. I wanted to know whether I could create infiltration dungeons where the spies have to figure out how to sneak to the end. It didn't quite work. Failing, I decided to create mock dungeons instead. I hired craftsmen and mages to build dungeons filled with non-lethal traps, for my new practice spies and thieves to practice. The thing with spies and thieves, is that they could easily double-cross us and we wouldn't know any better. Kay and Stella both frowned. I mean, you heard about the whole double-triple agent thing, right? Of course, but who cares? Next, we set up multiple competing spy guilds. The idea was that these spies would play both spy and counter-espionage roles, and they would have to compete against each other on a non-lethal basis. Then, from the pool of promising and loyal spies, I chose one, a man named Verida, and used Gift of Accelerated Growth. This pushed his level to level 60, and he gained a bunch of skills overnight. Verida became the Central Continent's second level 60 spy, after Master Intip. Yet, even with the new levels and skills, Verida still needed practice and experience. Knowing the skills is one thing, applying them out in the field is another. One thing that particularly annoyed me about spies was their ability to speak to each other using some kind of magical code. If it was not for Patrick's constant record-keeping and continuous decryption, we would have missed a lot more spies. Each spy required far more resources and mental capacity to track than most other classes, simply because each of them had skills that interfered with my surveillance. Someone with a low-level stealth ability would take twice the normal bandwidth, but a high-leveled spy needed the tracking of a single artificial mind. So, if there were multiple level 60+ spies, or a hero-tier spy, it's possible for me to miss them, or only detect them if they did something. A hero spy could probably sneak all the way to Freshka, at least, until they ran into Patrick's range and the bubble of my domain powers. The good part so far is that spies can't maintain their abilities full-time. So far both of my level 60 spies have skills that are only active for up to 4 to 6 hours, with a cooldown of a day. That meant I could still spot them once they dropped their skills. Yet, that was a time-consuming, tedious thing to do that I delegated to my artificial minds. As it is, I have so many trees on the central continent that I can support quite a lot of artificial minds, perhaps in the thousands. Technically, because these minds do most of the mundane administrative oversight work to allow me to function as a divine being. That meant keeping eyes on prayers, on people, on other tasks. Each artificial mind can do a lot, but now they take up space. The Valley of the Unrodden, once filled with giant trees, were gradually replaced by the artificial minds. They are the buzz in the background, the constant hum of their thoughts. They each observe their own part of the continent. Some followed individuals, like spies, or supported the Continental Beetle Transportation Network. Some worked on my many little improvement projects, like beetle weapons, or insect adaptations. Some checked on my own Valthorns and the priests, ensuring that they were safe and performed their duties properly. Thousands of little artificial minds, each a name, but in the background. Patrick, as the special one, lorded over them all. But I considered whether there was a point to having another one. 2 super minds instead of 1, to expand the range of our powers, and to compute more things. My artificial minds were my magical equivalent of having a Big Brother surveillance state. I am the Big Brother of Central Continent, as much as a part of me loathed myself for it. The world will be watched, the gods are watching, even if they are far away, and these days, I suspect everyone is trying to spy on each other. That said, a surveillance state was primarily defensive. It kept control of the state that it held. Offensively, I would have to either expand to that continent, which is bottlenecked by one single Lumoof, or use spies. I sent Lumoof back to the north, and continued our surveillance of the forces at work. The nations of the northern islands are highly fragmented, despite their outward unified appearance. The bickering happens beneath a veneer of civility. Here, where seas, straits, channels and lakes separate the islands, the assassinations become a favored way of fighting. The heroes left successfully for the other continents and are now working on other things. But even they were curious about the whole god summoning incident. I got a message from Colette. Kay replied. They wanted to know what happened. I only responded that you spoke to the Ivan god. Good enough. They want to know the contents. Tell them to ask the triumvirs. We are not at liberty to disclose. Push the problem to someone else. The triumvirs made an announcement about a week after our meeting, that a special conference was held with the faith of Eon and that a great peace treaty has been agreed in principle, that all aggressions arising from faith should thus formally cease. The formal terms will be signed at a later date. It sent messages flying, as the other 3 temples demanded to know the details. At this point, the 3 triumvirs have not left, and they sought my guidance. Act as if I don't exist. I responded. You 3 are to lead Ava like normal, and that means you must be free to make decisions on that basis, so long as it does not contravene our agreed peace treaty. The triumvirs had to leave quickly, as those back on the eastern continent will have plenty of questions. But they first leaked that it was a peace treaty brokered by the Ivan god, and that the 2 faiths have agreed to peace with no reparations on either side. Peace wasn't so bad, and most of them could accept it. The Ivan Church would have to cough out some sums from their own treasuries to compensate the kingdoms that were most devoted to the war, but that was it. Peace is the god's will. That was plausible, believable, and certainly, it aligned to what most kingdoms wanted. A war with a continent an entire ocean away. What good does that do? It was easy, in this case, to claim it was their god's will. A lie, but necessary one. I have bigger problems to fry. I am not feeling too good. Kay admitted privately to Stella. The whole thing with the gods made her feel a sense of dread. And there's no one I can talk to. Stella patted her back. It's a useless gesture. She's a golem, so she doesn't feel any physical muscle soreness. Oh, come on now. There's me. You were not a hero. You don't know what it feels like to suddenly be told that we're just nothing more than medicine. That we are unstable medicines that would harm the flesh. Stella sat next to her. It's something you and the other heroes have realized to some extent, so I personally believed you would have expected it. It's one thing to suspect your parents don't want you, and another to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. I would never have imagined you would think of the gods as your parents. Stella sat. That's honestly quite creepy. Kay caught herself. Yeah, that's a bad analogy. I guess it's like your crush telling you to buzz off, I guess. That's still kind of weird. Stella laughed. But cheer up. Now that you know they don't really care, there's no reason to take their requirements all that seriously. I mean, how do I put it? Kay looked at Stella. Her eyes were a little watery. I think it's predatory. What they are doing. They pick us and send us across the worlds, tell us young, impressionable souls seeking validation, value and recognition, that we are destined to be heroes, instill within us this sense of grand purpose, magically influenced our minds such that we stick to the goal. You've known that. Yeah, but hearing it said so matter-of-factly really is different. Kay said. Stella smiled. Heroes are just like young innocent fresh graduates who are sucked into the corporate feel-good mission statements and sent out to the world, only to discover that their support isn't great, and the purported values are nothing more than just something written to satisfy some arbitrary rating system. Kay turned and looked at Stella. Shit. Corporate life is like that. Despite their age, I still occasionally forget that all these heroes never had any working experience. This hero stint is probably their first job. That's what my friends say, and you seem to be manifesting similar symptoms. Burnout from work. A realization that everything is just corporate speak. Kay had a look on her face. Wait, are you saying I am having a quarter-life crisis? You've been at this hero thing for a while, and then you moved on and now focus on helping the heroes. Now you're wondering why you're doing it all in the first place. That sounds like a quarter-life crisis. You're feeling lost, even without the god's mind control. Kay gently smacked Stella on the arm. Stop it, you're making me feel worse. Am I wrong? Stella sat. I mean, we've known each other for how long? You didn't seem that interested in being my friend at first, though. Kay responded. I am just slow to warm up. Really. C-156A Garden Patch. Year 188. The North was in a frenzy, after a rumor that the missing hero was in the North. Strangely enough, I found him before anyone else did. Once Lumoof was back in the North, my trees continued to spread. My trees soon covered most of the largest island in the North, and I started to spawn subsidiary trees in the unpopulated places in the North. The North, being a colder place, had most of its populations concentrated on the coastlines and along key rivers. That meant there were large pockets of uninhabited pine and spruce forests. There were also some parts where they were considered taigas or snow forests or boreal forests, where I could expand my roots and connect to more trees with little need for holding back. There's a lot of hidden things in the North. Within a month of expanding, I discovered so many hidden dungeons buried under snow and ice, and even more buried cities and towns hidden under no more than a few feet of dirt. The harsh cold and winters seem to deter adventurers, and in the cold environment spawns monsters of quite a high tier, generally level 40s to 60s. Some were familiar, like the dire wolves and snow foxes of seen during the Great Blizzard spell. Snow. Ice giants were common in the hilly, ice-covered peaks, like those we've seen on Arya's Island. Your presence seems to fluctuate a bit. Oh, sensing the presence of others is a hard thing. Like the heroes, I couldn't sense their presence until they were close to my main body. I concluded that domain presence was something that only the main body possessed. Ice. Forests. An entirely new continent. I wondered what other secrets are buried beneath these dirt. No, more than that, could there be submerged continents? Are there the equivalents of Atlantis in this world? If so, could I find them with my roots? Right now, my roots still could not cross the oceans. If there was any Atlantis equivalents, they would be in the vast oceans of the world, submerged by some grand magic. Thus, I asked my mages and Valthorns to perform research on long-lost cities and submerged civilizations. Back to the North again, I've gone off tangent. My trees spied on the cities, and the villages. It was a lot easier to spy on villages that were surrounded by trees and forests, but these were places where nothing much happened. Usually. Then I found the missing hero in one of these quiet villages, deep in the mountains. We did not recognize him at first. After all, he just seemed like a regular person who hunted in the woods, collecting snakes and lizards. It was a magical orb that appeared one day that gave him away. It appeared suddenly from the ether, like an invisibility spell was dispelled, and it floated in a wooden lodge. Ken, are you there? Ken was a plain, somewhat handsome man, and my allocated minds were listening when the conversation happened. There were many clues in hindsight, because in this village, everything seemed new. The lodges were surprisingly well built, and the facilities were strangely modern. There was also a huge wall, and a very large stone building that I couldn't look through. Ken was not alone. Your friend's calling you again. A half-elf girl responded. Ken smiled and just patted her head. Thanks. He went to the room and sat down. Chung. What is it? Where are you? I told you. I am not saying a thing. Look. Right now, all the temples are looking for you secretly, and there's even the nasty guys out there. The hero hunters, the wannabe hero friends, some secret spy and assassin guilds. There's a lot of people on your tail. They are already on the fake trail I left in the south, but they'll figure it out soon. I know, but I am close to my breakthrough. Just give me a bit more. Dude, I can't keep doing this without you telling me what the fuck is going on, alright? Ken took a deep breath. I am going to give up my hero class. Wait, how? Chung on the other side sounded pissed. I am going to commit heresy, of course. Heresy. Chung's voice sounded uncomfortable. The former hero, Astra, used blood magic. That was enough for him to be excommunicated. I plan to do the same. Wait, Ken, are you sure? Is this really worth it? Remember that I told you about how Astra was marked. No, Ken, don't do this. Look, my friend, this whole thing is a scam. The journals you've seen already hinted at it to you. We're not heroes. We're just tools. I am not planning to let myself be sucked into some stupid overarching system of the gods. Not now. Not ever. I am quitting. Ken, the demons will come anyway. Why not just be a hero and defeat the Demon King? And what? We have 10 years and then the next one. No. I am calling it off. It doesn't work like that. Not with Astra either. I'll figure out how to deal with the Demon King once I am not a hero. I am sure after I do this, the gods will meddle with your mind and make you look for me as an enemy. I want you to resist that. Can you do that? Ken, this is insane. What if I can't resist them, and I'll be forced to hunt you down? No, don't do this. Ken pressed something on the orb, and it went poof. He got out, and looked at the others with him. I could now detect the faint presence of blood magic, masked under layers. It was then, a strange magical creature appeared from his shadow. A small spirit snake. Was it a good idea to lie to him like that? The spirit snake asked. I thought you two were good friends. He is, but it wasn't a total lie. We don't know what the gods will do. Ken answered with a sigh. Come. It's time to summon the rest. The snake coughed. He took out a small red knife that glowed in my spirit vision. Ken withdrew multiple other items that were all hidden in his spatial pocket, and placed them around the village. All of these items were strange, with markings I have not seen before. I quickly mentally noted them down. At that point, I noticed something strange with all the other villagers. They all had a spirit snake companion of some kind, and they were all behaving unnaturally. It took a bit more effort. I increased the number of trees present to improve my resolution, and then I noticed it. Ken's shadow was linked to all of them, a faint magic. The villagers were all possessed. They moved perfectly, they seemed to know where to put everything without requiring instruction. Some of them were mages, and they muttered something under their breath. The stone structure in the middle opened up to reveal thousands of snakes and lizards. They all moved into position, and Ken walked close to the snakes. With his red knife, he beheaded all of them, one by one, as the villagers started chanting. All of the earlier items all glowed, and then, as he slaughtered the snakes, I saw strange snake-like and lizard-like shadows run around, but never able to leave that small area. The ritual lasted 3 hours, and Ken's red knife was soon drenched in the blood of all the lizards and snakes. During that entire time, the possessed villagers chanted. Then, he lifted up the red knife, muttered a few words, and then, I saw all the shadows drain away and sucked into the red knife. Then, all the blood and remains of the snakes and lizards melted into a reddish paste, then swirled into the knife. In a quick but practiced motion, Ken then stabbed himself in the heart with the blob. At that moment, I felt like I had a stinging migraine, and I felt my mind domain preventing mental attack. Then, I saw Ken's body glow red. The knife glowed and I thought I saw the shadows of the thousands of snakes and lizards. If this was blood magic, this was a very strange one. I tried to use more powerful surveillance visions then, and changed one of the trees to a subsidiary tree. I now saw fragments of spirits and souls, all in that red knife. I tried to identify the knife. Blood knife of sacrifice. A knife used for sacrifices. Collects fragment of souls, spirits and essences. Well, thanks, but it didn't tell me what exactly was happening. No, if it collected fragments of souls, what was it trying to do? A massive red snake made of blood then surged out of his body. In its fangs were a big white marble block. It rolled and coiled, and the white block seemed to attempt to move. But the red liquid blood snake wrestled with the white block. They tossed and spun and rolled. The snake's body smashed into the structures in the village. Then, Ken's body glowed again, but then, this time, a massive shadow with thousands of snake heads popped out of his body, and it smashed into the white marble block. The white marble block's outer layer melted, and what's left was a white spherical core. Ken moved, and with a swift, well-practiced slash, the red knife slammed into the spherical core. The knife hit the white core head-on, and then, the white core shook violently. Warning the hero Ken error. Status unclear. I saw the red snake swirl around the white core. It shrunk, and formed a red cube around the white core. The multi-headed snake shadow followed next. It shrunk into the size of a small lizard, and then melted into that red cube. It instantly changed the bright red cube to darker red. The knife shattered, and then instantly melted. All the villagers collapsed at the same time, like puppets whose strings were cut. Ken's body stopped glowing, and he stood as the molten red liquid from the knife swirled around his body, and coated his skin and flesh. His wounds healed. He didn't move for a good 10 minutes, somehow he managed not to fall. Perhaps it was magic, though that's probably the least of the things I should think about. His eyes opened, and he looked around. He briefly closed his eyes again, and then when he opened, the snake appeared once more from his shadow. The ritual was a success. Though I feel we have company. Ken looked around. Really? I don't see anyone. The snake looked around too. Never mind. Great. Now I can live in peace. He seemed to activate a skill, and in an instant, his hair grew long, and his facial features changed slightly. His skin turned more scalish. The magical orb immediately started vibrating, but Ken did not respond. Ken, are you there? What happened? He looked at it, tapped it. I did something. I'll let you know in 2 to 3 months whether it's successful. But if it fails, I think you'll get a notification. The orb sent a magical arrow that flew up into the air, and then disappeared. Ken tapped the orb again, and this time, the orb vanished into some kind of pocket space. The villagers were still unconscious, and Ken left the village that day. The shape-shifted Ken did not say a word since then, as he wandered from town to town, never stopping for more than a week. The villagers who regained consciousness did not seem to remember why they were there, and what they did at all. This hero probably possessed some kind of mind control or possession ability through those snake shadows. What are those snake shadows? I had no idea. As a tree that lived so long and seen so much, it absolutely annoyed me that there's still so many new things I've never seen. I suspect whatever that ritual was, it was otherworldly in origin, because it was able to remove or tamper with a hero class. That said, I still kept watch. Could he be a threat? After all, he was able to tamper with a hero class. What did he do then? I saw the fragment of souls. No. I had an epiphany then. I had been trying to remove the hero class by force and magical power. This was when I developed a speculative theory, that he absorbed more soul fragments, and some kind of essences, and those essences flooded and merged with his hero class in his soul spring. He wasn't removing the hero class. He was corrupting it so that he could be free of its influence. Using the soul-ish qualities of blood magic to enhance and corrupt his own soul such that he was free of the heroes. The other idea was that they somehow used the soul fragments as some kind of abrasive or removal agent. Like using soap to bind to the hero class and then pull it out. Well, need to find a volunteer to try it. Patrick. But it'll have to be a hero. Looking at it, it would probably kill anyone else who tried to do it. I agree, that ritual looked really complex, but I had enough data to attempt to replicate it. But how did Ken get the people necessary to do so? I also have other questions. Like, who was that snake spirit? I tried to follow Ken as he moved through the cities. There were parts one couldn't see him. Here in the northern islands, my network of eyes and ears are full of holes. What did he do? Thankfully, he dropped his guard about 2 months after the incident, as he was taking a break. The snake spirit curled out and sat on the log. How are you feeling? Not as bad as what you described. I think I am ready. We got lucky. I think that the hero class was relatively low level. Ken sat as he munched on a loaf of bread. It's hard. Alright, hit me with it. What's next? Ken said as he finished his loaf of bread. Great. Now we need to prepare for our next step of the bargain. We need to send the swallowed class to my world. That'll be a lot harder. A lot harder. Well, for one, I do not have a foolproof way of sending something back home. The snake confessed. Ken paused. Wait, you do have an idea, then. Is this the so crazy enough to work idea? Because if it is, then we should use it. I do, but it involves you dying. That's not what we agreed on, and I wouldn't do it because I am stuck with you. Ken laughed. Then tell me the alternatives, but still tell me that idea that involves me dying. Because I need to know. Just in case. Never mind. I still don't get where you have all these strange concepts. There's this website called TV Tropes. Ken said. Where they explain the common story paths and events. Is this website an oracle? Well, not really, but it's more like an astrologist's predictions. Something like that. Ken sat. Anyway, I feel much more clear-headed now that the demons aren't always appearing in my dreams. It's safe for me to speak with Chung, right? The snake shrugged. Yes. But later. First, we must investigate that presence we felt last year. I must know whether it is the gods. Ken frowned. Seriously, why do you care? Why get involved in their schemes again, after all you've said about their plots? After all you said about how they've surrendered your worlds. The snake remained silent. I want to live peacefully, find a place somewhere where I can raise a family, and watch my kids grow up. Maybe work as an enchanter or an artificer. Ken said. All these plots, in the end, are just the games these powers play. Now that I'm out, I have no intention of getting back in. We don't have to, but I just want to know. I want to send word home, if we ever find the gods. I met the gods when I reincarnated. Those are different. Fine, I'll just ask for news once we get to town. If we can use your abilities to control some people in the towns, that'll help. I used up quite a lot of my magic when I performed the ritual. I'll need more time to recharge. It takes longer for me to replenish my magical energies in this pathetic spiritual form. You'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. Alright. Just pray I don't trigger some stupid town gathering quest chain. I am not jumping from one hero storyline to another type of storyline. This Ken seemed genre aware. That's strange. I suppose I am looking at a hero who has some light novel knowledge and he's applying it to get himself out of trouble. They left and headed to town. Sadly, the town they were in was all cobbled up with stone and rocks, and I couldn't follow them all the way. The three triumvirs returned to their respective cities, and the peace treaty was formally announced. Our growing network of spies revealed that the other temples were quite relieved that it was nothing more than just a peace treaty, and some small trade-ish agreements. The status quo held, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. C-157 Reunion at a tea party. Year 189. It was a little bit more annoying to expand my trees to the cities in the north. Unlike the central continent where trees are plentiful and common, in the northern islands, the cities were not tree-friendly at all. That said, there was still room for shrubs and less obvious trees like wall-crawling plants. But this was inherently slower, and I felt a sense of repulsion for the treeless cities. Even in the cold weather there were ways to integrate plants into the terrain, and I would have used my root network to use my roots as a form of heat distribution system. That would create a warmer environment that could support more verdant cities. The lack of parks within the city area itself was also absolutely disgusting, only certain cities have them. It seemed though, there were at least two agencies at work. One, led by the Rosewoods. Their agents were generally well equipped and trained, and they were the counter-hero hunters. But even they had not so loyal operatives. Then, there's the hero hunters. Those that wanted to kill the heroes and gain some special class, though there was no data on what that special class was. Also, it's a little pointless for me to kill a hero if I can't gain classes. So, if anything, it should be a humanoid thing. Would you kill heroes? I asked. He was motionless, as he rested in a giant tree. His body was linked to the giant tree, and through him, I controlled the rest of the trees. If you ask me to, yes. Lumoof answered. There are days where I still feel uncomfortable to be at the receiving end of such devotion and loyalty. One day I will, I said. It is inevitable. We will be ready, even if we have to die to do it. Edna responded too, at the same question. As my surveillance expanded, I was able to support the other Valthorn operatives. I provided cover fire and protected them in the event of any conflict with the other forces. Here, in the north, I decided against using my beetles, since we are supposed to operate without being detected. I also did not want to reveal that I had somehow stretched my trees to the north. At least, not yet. I would use beetles if I had a more secure route link to the north. My operatives, with my support and intel, were able to thus confront and attempt more high-risk infiltration. This was when I encountered one of the Rosewood hotels. A large wooden structure 6 stories, and a large subterranean presence. There was a magical quality to it, a very faint but strangely familiar one. It was when my roots touched the hotels that I felt and then knew who it was. Domain blocking mental attack. What was that? I immediately put the name to the sensation. Quote. Mila. It's been so long. Has it already been a century? Yes. It has been a century since they left. The sensation immediately made me wonder and think about how they've been after all this time. Their soul contract would have maybe 900 years left. I thought about Alexis, and her constant plots. Was she still angry, or has time mellowed her thoughts? No, I had to talk to them face to face, and then called Edna, Rune, Johann and a few other of the high-leveled Valthorns together. For old time's sake, I asked Lausanne to come along too. She and her mom was probably the only one left who remembered them. A group of 12, I briefed them about Alexis and Mila, and then Stella opened a portal, again, and sent them through to the other continent. Lumuf transformed back to his normal state, the giant tree opened up to let him out. We're going to meet an old friend of Eon, he said to the group. The Rosewood Hotel in Rochendam stood. To anyone who does not know, it is just a luxury inn, one of many throughout the Northern Islands. Those that do know, understand that it is also the base of an influential espionage and assassins group, also named the Rosewoods. Lumuf, fully geared for war, walked through the door, and instantly I sensed it. The entire hotel is her. Mila was here, somewhat, and already the employees in the hotel all stared. The receptionist, a half-dwarf, merely glanced and quickly bowed. Greetings, esteemed guests, and welcome to the Rosewood Hotel. Do you have a reservation? Lumuf walked close to the receptionist. No, I don't. The smartly dressed receptionist glanced at the other members of the group, mainly Edna and Lausanne. Lausanne looked around and merely smiled. I am actually here for a meeting, and I would like to have a discussion with Lady Mika. The dwarf receptionist nodded. Lady Mika has been expecting your group for some time. Oh. The other staff members and guests of the hotel quickly walked away. They behaved as if something was going to happen, and perhaps, there was. Already, I spread my roots and trees and attempted to surround the hotel. The half-dwarf smiled. Well, for such high-ranking guests such as yourself, please give me a moment and let me prepare. But the place was built with enchanted stone and skill-infused roads. My roots couldn't penetrate them so easily. The walls of the hotel were sturdy, easily made to be a fortress, even if it appeared like a luxury hotel. Lumuf smiled back at the half-dwarf. That would be most appreciated. Please assist us to arrange a meeting room. I believe we have a shared history, and will have much to discuss. The dwarf smiled, and picked up a magical crystal. Call the board. There was some inaudible noise from the magical crystal. The dwarf nodded in response, and then placed the crystal back on the table. All right, right this way. The dwarf hopped off a stool at the back of the reception counter and then led the way. A magical wooden staircase descended from above, and at the end of it, a door that was previously closed by wood. Will everyone be coming, or just the few of you? The dwarven receptionist asked. The boardroom is large. Lumuf looked at Edna, and Edna nodded. Just 5. Edna, Lausanne, Rune and Johann joined the walk upstairs. The rest waited at the lobby. The dwarf signaled to a bunch of other employees, who promptly led them to an area with comfortable sofas. They went there as told, but some insisted on standing up. Upstairs was a straight walkway. I sensed that the walls were probably moving, and there are hidden rooms around us. Still, nothing that we could not handle. We were led to a large boardroom with a long oval-shaped table. There was enough place for at least 50, and it had high ceilings, magical lighting and all the amenities one could expect of a boardroom. A few pots of tea were also prepared, with matching cups. A meeting with tea. That's nice. Fragrant too. It seemed that Mila had been waiting, but I sensed this wasn't really her. No, that's not right either. It is her, but this was like just a part of her. I suspected then, that Mila probably had a way of splitting herself to all of her branch hotels. It's been a while since I've met someone that works for Eon, and it's been a while since we've met, Lausanne. Oh, she probably doesn't know Lumuf is my avatar and that I could see through him. Lausanne smiled. It's been a while too, Lady Mika. You look a lot better than I've last remembered. Mila's wooden form sat on the chair, and she gestured for the rest of us to sit. You too, Lausanne. Come. There's really no need for hostilities today. It must have been a long journey and we have so much common history that we should at least give diplomacy a chance. Please, sit. I smirked at Mila's opening line. Lumuf gladly took the seat, and so did the others. Lausanne was first to ask. So, only you. Alexis. Mila smiled. She's out hunting. It's a busy time for us, with the hero hunters about. What brings you here, really? Lumuf took the lead. We're here to meet the power brokers of the region, of course. Well, that wasn't exactly a lie, but it dodged the point of revealing our own clandestine activities. Well, I am sure you would be very busy then. It seems your agents have been doing a lot more than just meeting people. Mila smiled. Her voice was strangely firm. But I suppose I shall lead in establishing friendly relations. I owe that much to Eon. So, what do you want to know? Lumuf just smiled and lied through his teeth, a gift of the priestly class. We are genuinely looking to meet those who hold sway over the northern islands. There has been incredibly concerning news of attempted assassinations on the heroes, and even more blasphemous tales of a supposed 10th hero. Mila grinned. Patriarch Lumuf, certainly Eon can tell you with high reliability on whether there is a 10th hero, so there is no need to pull that trick with me. I may take the appearance of a young lady, but I have lived decades in the north. Yes, there is a 10th hero, and we are also looking for him. The hero hunters want to get to him first, of course, for the rumored gift. A gift. Lumuf feigned ignorance. Well, I know nothing of a gift. Yes, the gift, which we still don't know anything about, because nobody has killed a hero. Not that we know of. Mila said. We actually thought you guys would be the first to earn it. Mila pointed at Edna. It's a pleasure to finally meet the famous vanguard of the central continent. Thank you for not killing Alvin or my partner. Edna didn't reply, but she had a look of annoyance on her face. Anyway, we are bound by soul contract to Eon. Mila finally got to the point. So I really don't see a need for us to be hostile with each other. Our goals may differ, but I am sure we can find common ground. Tell me, what exactly are you here for? If you're looking for the hero, we don't have him. No, we're here to make friends. Lumuf deadpanned. Mila paused. Eon sent you to make friends. After a while, she laughed. Ah, I've forgotten Eon's dry sense of humor. Surely, that can't be true. Well, he also asked us to check on you, whether you are alright. She smiled and played along. I am fine, thank you. Lumuf nodded. That's good. How is Miss Alexis? Does she still hate Eon? Mila stared. Wait, Eon really sent you just to check on us? Yes, he sensed you recently, and wanted to talk to you. I think he thinks of you too every now and then. Lumuf said. He felt your presence here. There was a moment of silence. Mila didn't say a word as she seemed like she was processing the statement. Lumuf, being the trained priest that he is, gave Mila the space to process her thoughts. He could tell when someone was going through some complicated emotions. I felt, maybe I too was a party that contributed to that. I thought about them occasionally, and I sometimes missed Mila's rather cheerful presence. Now that I've said the truth of my origins to Arya, and my senior Valthorns, I wonder whether things would have been different if I had revealed the truth then. But I consoled myself that circumstances were different, and I didn't have the power or security that I have now. No, more important, I had a slightly different mindset. Back then, I hadn't experienced the destruction of New Freaka, nor had I resolved that this cycle had to end, even if I did contemplate it. In truth, it was all the little deviations that led to that branch of the story. This is weird, Mila responded after that moment of thought. We struggled, but I like to think we are fine now. Lumuf smiled and gently nodded. He allowed her words some space, and then finally answered, that's good. Eon said to me, that he still wished to respect the agreement back then, that the two parties do not bother each other and will continue their separate ways. But with his recent growth and scope, an interaction between the two parties is inevitable, so he hoped to come to some kind of arrangement. There are also some things that he wished for your input. Mila nodded with a smile. It actually seemed genuine, rather than a practiced one. Even after a century, the agreement holds. In this world, only the spirits of nature can uphold and comply with such long agreements. Lumuf didn't need to respond to that statement, as Mila soon continued. Yes, I understand his concerns. It is something we have been thinking about since we heard of his resurgence in the central continent. What does Eon have in mind? He paused, and glanced around. Everyone had heard of it, Lozan too, even though she was no longer in the higher ranks of the Valthorns. Is this room secure? Mila snapped a finger, and the walls had an additional layer. These were anti-magical sheets. Mostly secure. A hero could still listen in. Good enough. He intends that we cooperate, on matters involving the demons, the gods and the heroes. Lumuf placed his hands on the table, his eyes locked on Mila. A gaze that Mila returned. I'll explain what Eon's goal is, and it is only known to the inner circle of the Valthorns, and Eon has said that he wished that these words are not shared to anyone else, other than Miss Alexis. Will you accept these terms? Mila leaned in. Well, yes. Eon's grand overarching goal is to end the cycle of demons and heroes. The world has suffered too much, the earth weakened by the centuries of constant warfare. Ruins scattered all over the world, buried and destroyed. He is tired of this entire scheme. He is tired that this world has to serve as a battlefield of the gods and the demons. So, he wants to break the world free of this seasonal disaster. Will you help us? Mila's eyes widened and she processed it. She leaned back on her chair and she spun around for a while. Her eyes darted back to Lumuf again. She stared and scanned the eyes of every other person present, and then locked on Lozan. Lozan, do you know of this? Only fairly recently, Lozan said. She was thankful that she didn't accept the soul-strengthening seed then. A pawn in the war of gods and demons. That was too much for her. Doesn't this mean he will go against the gods, and also the demons? Is he prepared for that? It explains a lot. No, it explains his secrecy, and the things he has been collecting and gathering. No, this explains all his behavior since those days too. The perpetual paranoia. Mila seemed to have a huge trove of data and information that she had collected, and I felt a little slighted at the term. I was always paranoid. It's partly why I like to work alone. But I can't. Not anymore. Edna chimed in. Eon believed that yourself and Lady Alexis, as former heroes, can add some insights and provide some perspective to how such a plan can be accomplished. Together with other former heroes and accidental summons, he wished to form a team capable of something more daring. Mila looked at Edna. This revelation must be discussed with my partner. I will say it frankly that I am willing to assist where I can, but the Rosewoods are a partnership. Lumuf smiled. We understand. This is quite a bombshell to receive during an unexpected reunion. It is. Mila said. I must call my partner now. Everyone stood and they gave a gentle nod. Thank you for the meeting. May we receive favorable news. Mila nodded, and ushers came to escort the group out of the hotel. They offered refreshments, of course, but no one took any. About a week after the meeting, the demonic rifts opened. There were 2 more years left on the clock for the next Demon King. This time, it was on the far western continent. I summoned my Valthorns, for a brief strategy meeting. It's time for us to go on the offense, and start chasing Demon Kings and get a bit more of that sweet Demon King experience. Fighting champions is a contentious point. In terms of challenge, the higher level dungeons and their bosses provide an equal if not superior challenge. Yet, dungeons at that level have long cooling periods, and fighting demons will be a large part of my Valthorn's future combat career. Our plan is simple. When the heroes fight the Demon King, we want to be there. I want those with the court of the TreeTrees to fight and support the heroes, so that all of you can get stronger. If any of you are at risk of death, I will warp all of you back. It's possible that I couldn't react in time, or if any of you feel too weak, let me know. Those level 100 and above will be deployed to chase down champions, and destroy them. C-158 priming the land. Year 190. We focused on preparing for the upcoming fight. We were going to hit the Demon King hard, and hopefully get some levels out of it. I wanted my level 200, I was so close, and I would empty my entire arsenal at the Demon King if it gets me there. So, first things first, Kay got in touch with the heroes to negotiate an arrangement. Hi Colette and Prabhu, where are you two these days? Kay said. It took a while, but what Ava said now faintly at the back of her mind. We're actually in the Western Continent already to hunt the champions. The Western Continent, home and stronghold of the Naren temples. Or was it? My spies told me some of the Naren top dogs have moved to the south. But I wasn't sure. Nera was probably one of the more secretive temples, but also one of the weakest, despite being spared of most of the demon's attacks. Perhaps Nera was even more distant. No, maybe Nera doesn't even bother anymore. At this point, I really wonder which god still looked after this world. Whatever little that means. Kay nodded. Alright, that's great. So, remember that question you asked a few years back, about having an arrangement to fight the Demon King? Uhu. Prabhu nodded. Eon would like to volunteer his elite forces to support your next battle with the Demon King. I am not sure whether you guys want our assistance, that's why we thought of asking. The two mages paused. I need to talk to Chung and Hafiz, but it shouldn't be a problem. More hands should help. At least, we could use some help with the champions and all the other small fries while we focus on the king. Alright. Kay nodded. Next step was figuring out how to deploy and project sufficient force that we could have an impact on the Demon King. The system clearly favored those who contributed to the fight, and it is a reasonable assumption that our level gain is correlated to the contribution. So, this meant we needed a few things. 1. A way to send my forces to where the Demon King was at a short notice. It was possible to use my own tree networks and Stella's portal to send a small force there quickly, so that meant the logistics of manpower was partly solved. One of the things I wanted to test out was whether Lumuf was able to function as home when using the court of the TreeTree's recall function. It didn't work, and they still automatically returned to my main body. I suppose the system for the court is still programmed to only consider my main body as home. It's too bad. If it worked, I essentially could use Lumuf as a warp point and then dropship the rest of my forces around him. I could even use him to send people across worlds, as long as he was on the other side. Perhaps some other upgrade to the court of the TreeTree will allow this. No matter, I had to work with what I have at my disposal. I also needed to figure out how I could throw huge amounts of crystal bombs at the enemy. Thanks to Alka's persistent experiments over the past few years and almost decades, we now have a rather huge arsenal of crystal bombs. Similarly, we experimented with my vines flinging the crystal bombs through a void portal. It worked, as long as the components of the crystal bombs did not involve star mana. It's a crude solution, but I didn't like the fact that everything depended on Stella and her band of void mages in training. A single point of failure meant if the next Demon King had some kind of anti-magic or anti-void energy ability, we wouldn't be able to use it. No, there was also the risk that the Demon King, a creature with at least some void magic ability, would be able to interfere with Stella's magical portal. So, we had to consider alternatives, as backup. Through a bit of upgrades and outfitting, we finally managed to get Hyperion to gradually swim to the western continent with a huge arsenal of crystal bombs. But thanks to its incredibly slow speed, it would take half a year for him to actually arrive there. We also arranged for ships loaded with crystal bombs too. The idea was to plant the bombs everywhere and then detonate them when the demons are near. Stella didn't seem particularly pleased with the idea. This has the problem with landmines written all over it. That's partly true. But of course, these crystals are magically activated. They shouldn't cause such problems, right? Wait. No. Actually, all bombs have this problem. It's possible that some crystal bombs don't detonate and are instead embedded in the ground. Someday, they will get accidentally triggered by some hapless adventurer. Or their demon sensing runes get confused and blow something up. Everything decays over time, even magic. So, once they decayed, their behavior is unpredictable. Institutions decay too, and I noticed it in the Valthorns. As the central continent accepted my dominion, there was a shift in the behaviors of those who were admitted to the Valthorns, especially those who grew up knowing that I am the supreme authority of the land. Arrogance. Minor abuse of power. Some of these were hidden when they were just part of the Valtrian order, but the promotion to the Valthorns revealed some of this. Worse, I was only made aware of this after a few incidents I witnessed while doing other things, and commanded my artificial minds to highlight all of them. There were many small instances. Arrogance was not punishable, even if it did make us unlikable. For the minor abuse of power, it was hard to really assess whether it was the person who provided or granted the payments were trying to curry favor. There were benefits to being in high places, and I saw how the Valthorns would recommend their friends or families for certain roles. Not exactly unallowed, but it's nepotism. As an institution, now that the Valthorns and Valtrian order is considered mature, I needed my artificial minds to play the role of an opposing or offsetting force, of identifying those who are outside them for admission. But I went off tangent with my thoughts there. Back to crystal bombs, was excessive use of magical artifacts the equivalent of using landmines? Maybe, But, I argue that danger posed by the Demon King, as a beast of significant destructive power, offset the risks of using magical artifact. One day when I, or the non-heroes under my wing, gain sufficient power to challenge a Demon King without such bombs, I will remove them from our combat plans. But now, the bombs are a necessity, even if I am doing the magical equivalent of carpet bombing. The destruction of the Demon King easily killed more than my bombs ever will. Stella nodded, though she did make a rather poignant statement. He who fights with monsters, might take care lest he thereby become a monster. Nothing to worry there, for I am already a monster. I am, by all means and definitions, a monster tree with magic and godly powers. Stella sighed. In our pursuit of peace and the end of this cycle, we will turn a war between man and demons, to a war between monsters and demons. That's not accurate. The gods were always the puppet masters. In the larger scheme of things, you've heard from Ava yourself, that this is a war between gods and the demons. We are just the background, the terrain and the natural environment rebelling against that stupid war. But on the ground, I think that's better, actually. It's better for the citizens that the war is fought by monsters. We can take the losses a lot better. Druids gathered giant birds and flying creatures. Most of them were small, but master trainers and animal tamers can grow their tamed beasts to larger proportions. I looked back at my Titan choices. If I had an air force, the air force could functionally perform as my bombing squads. Drop the crystal bombs from the air and fly off. Or could I have suicide bombers? No, it wouldn't be suicide bombing if we used summons and spirits that can respawn to deliver the crystal bomb payload. Magical summons would be the best weapons delivery tool. Through some magical modifications, we managed to upgrade Hyperion to be a floating ship with cannons. A battleship. More oil rig than ship, it carried large cannons that could throw the crystal bombs a certain distance to their target. Its range wasn't fantastic, so it wouldn't be able to shoot far inland unless more upgrades were made. For Lumuf, he moved to the western continent, our expansion plans in the north put on hold. That can resume after we capture whatever experience and levels we could from the Demon King. Hell, maybe I can get something that can solve my damned ocean problem. It was also my first time in the western continent. One thing I noticed was that the culture of the world is actually relatively aligned. There are kingdoms everywhere, and the differences in cultures are usually in the small things. Like the way they eat certain foods, and the other small stuff. Kings are still kings, and nations run the way they were run elsewhere. That meant the local lords is pretty much local gods. Like the northern islands have Arya and Icebang, I wondered whether there's a tree spirit or some other spirit here in the western continent, and whether I could rope them into the fight. The kingdoms of the western continents are putting up pretty good resistance against the demons. Many of them had large standing armies, courtesy of their relative safety during the past few decades. Instead, they were mostly focused on fighting each other. From what I understood, they were still in the period of warring states when the demonic rifts appeared. Nothing to unite a nation in war than a bigger bad guy. Oh well, no matter. Lumuf arrived in a port city called Pelabuhan, on the eastern shore of the western continent. The first thing I noticed was that the Nera priests have really lovely outfits. We came, formally, as reinforcements at the invitation of one of the friendly kingdoms on the western continent. We came by ship, because we did not want to reveal our possession of void portals. Our goals were multifold, of course. The main objective is to participate in the battle against the demons, gain levels. Not so publicly. Our goals are to make friends, get more information on the powers of those who rule Nera, use the demonic attacks as an excuse to freely explore places that was previously not so accessible. Even more secretly, it was the best chance to mix my spies into their society, get to know some of the individuals, and see how we could gradually grow our influence on the Neran temple. Our goal, with Nera, Gaia and Hawa, was to learn their methods of communicating with their gods. The Nera priests were hostile, but they did not attempt to fight Lumuf or the entourage. The gap in our strength was clear to anyone who bothered to do some research, even if politically, we generally allow the other temples some dignity by not openly comparing our relative strengths. There were some boring formalities of introducing ourselves to the local rulers and all that, but that was a task I allowed Lumuf and the group to do. Even in the face of demons, there are sycophants and ass-kissers. These were tiring for me to deal with, so when there were political matters, I allowed Lumuf to handle it. Lumuf wasn't the wisest politically, but he had enough sense to give empty but pleasant-sounding assurances most of the time, such that the ass-kissers realized that they were going to have better luck with his subordinates. On this front, This was also one of the problems we have with diplomats, spies and our other agents. Away from my eyes on the central continent, all I could do was trust them to know what to say, to know how to spot those who seek to curry their favor with the powers they possessed, to know that just as we seek to gain from them, they too will gain from us. There, I have to believe that they have the experience and skills needed to spot what they should spot, and know of their biases. There were no eyes to watch them when they are away. Well, except through Lumuf. While Lumuf handled the preparations on the western continent, I also spoke with my fellow spirits. I intend for my warriors to join the fight against the Demon King. Would you be willing to make some weapons for them? I asked Arya and Icebang for the best weapons they could make. They agreed, and forged 10 weapons made out of some magical ice, which I offered to the 10 of my strongest Valthorns. For lilies, they made 5 sets of magical staffs made of fused bone and metal, which amplified both healing and death elemental magic. I also asked the fused wolf shaman for some things, but it had nothing to offer. That was fine. I decided not to ask for anything from Reefy. I think it would probably be mistaken what my intentions are. The demons that spawned this time were mostly smaller, impish creatures. They look like dark red versions of goblins, with small reddish wings that seemed to do nothing but let them hop a little bit higher. Claws. We also encountered one demonic champion, a large 2-headed reddish ogres with tentacles foe. I think we were gonna have the demonic corrupted orc hordes for the Demon King. If so, are we gonna get some kind of corrupted orc shaman for a Demon King? I must admit I am absolutely clueless about what you are talking about. Both Kay and Stella probably didn't play the popular gaming series. Of course, we also met the heroes. This time as fellow combatants. I am actually pleasantly surprised that Eon would help us. Prabhu said face to face to Kay. Lumuf was there, of course. Edna was on her way, by boat. One of my concerns was what if the Demon King was early. In that case, we would avoid combat until we could get our full forces in order. You made it sound like he was rather hesitant. Kay smiled. Well, just consider it a pleasant change of heart. Just to be sure. There's no catch, right? Nope. Just help fight the Demon King, and they'll leave right after. Kay repeated. Of course, the prize is the Demon King itself. So, what's the strategy? Wait for the Demon King to spawn, and lure the Demon King to you on favorable grounds. Kay said. I am sure you've seen in the journals how the Demon King can see us. It's possible to pretty much shout we're here with the use of star mana. Hopefully we get a dumb one that would fall for the trap, then we'll soften the Demon King up and you guys can land the finishing blow. The part where Jura and Lovies landed the finishing blow was happily omitted. There was no need to highlight that it was my people that did so. But it is a common story on the central continent, so maybe they've heard it. The mage hero nodded. Sounds doable. We're setting up our own magical formations too, hopefully it'll help. But if the journals are right, there must be a trick. The heroes, too, were scattered. Only Prabhu, Colette and Hafiz were here. Chung seemed to be working on some kind of secret project, but he promised that he would magically teleport to the western continent once his project was ready. As for Ken, with Lumuf preparing for the Demon King, I lost my ability to see through the trees of the northern islands, and so I lost Ken. I was not very confident I could find him again, especially with that snake spirit, but I weighed my priority and decided that gaining levels from the next Demon King outweighed whatever risk that they posed. Well, we can't predict the trick, the best we can do is prepare as hell, and fight like crazy. Kay said. Prabhu paused. True, not like we have a choice with all that godly mind control all over us. Try some tea. Kay offered. It might help. C-159 Fighting Trees. Year 191. The astral paths open. The path of light that glowed brightest repeated what happened before. Stella and her team of void mages attempted, however little, to meddle with the demon's path. I watched as her dark energies attempted to tamper with the path, and the void mana drained out of her. She was not strong enough to fight the complex powers of the demons. But she tried repeatedly, and she leveled up from the attempts. It's a lot more complicated than I thought. Stella commented. It's like they've just dug this river from their world to ours, and they are just floating on it. Huh, some kind of space travel lane. Yeah, it's also not just void mana. There's something else in this space river. But it's not star mana for sure. If I am right, the Demon King's core is nothing more than a cocoon to allow something so large to float through it. Stella's ability to visualize the path has also improved since 10 years ago, partly due to her levels and new skills. Or it may be that the astral path is like a rope, and the Demon King is hanging onto it like a ropeway, using this demon core as a tether. Oh, that's new information. If what we saw previously was just streaks of light, she's gained some ability to see what was in the streaks of light. I still couldn't, so sadly for me, I am just relying on her narration to figure out what exactly it looked like. This is normal to me, of course. I lived most of my life in this world without full vision, just partial, spiritual vision until I gained the tree eyes ability. I am not even sure what I am seeing. It's like recognizing words but not truly comprehending the meaning. Stella said. So it's like you have two eyes but you can't see Mount High. Yeah, she kept trying, of course. She injected a bit of her void mana into the sky, and failing. It's not working. It's either my powers are too unfocused, and by the time my powers reach the path, it's just less than what it was. She complained. Wait, what was that again? You said it's less by the time you reach it. Yeah, it's kinda like, it dissipates before it reaches the path. Would being closer to the sky help? She thought for a moment, and nodded. No harm trying. That was how I made the tallest giant attendant tree, as tall as I could manage, complete with a wooden, vine-powered ropeway lift to the top. I made it such that there was a large flat surface at the very top, a platform for the kinds of rituals Stella and her team of void mages could ever need. It was really, really tall, and with my magical augmentation and energies, it was probably the closest I'll get to a space elevator, even if it's still pretty tiny. I could even feel like the top of the tree was pulling away from me. Her team attempted it again, and still it was not successful. It still dissipated. But at least, I've only lost about half of our magical strength. Well, to truly escape the world's planetary shell would require something that's on the moon or even further. Do you think you'll do better if you attempted to interfere with the astral paths from the moons? She thought about it again. She initially shook her head wildly at how crazy the idea was, but then I could tell a part of her agreed with the idea. That's really, really crazy levels of distance. But it's possible. With enough magic you could open a portal to the moon. Even then, the moon may not be ideal as the moon may has its own sphere of interference. Well, yes. I've rarely seen Stella's face look so conflicted. Even more than actual moral dilemmas. But give me some time to mentally prepare. I am not prepared to open a portal to the moon. Not yet. Wouldn't it be cool? What if it just opens a vacuum and sucks everything up? You know that doesn't happen. Stella sighed. I need some time with the idea. I wondered then whether I could spread my trees on the moon. With the right amount of magic, assuming that magic works on the moon, we should theoretically be able to terraform the moon into an inhabitable space. In fact, if I could convert the moon into a safe space, that would be a less ideal long-run solution. It's quite strange that you consider terraforming the moon as a possible idea. Kay complained one day. I don't see why you're complaining. The demons clearly only pop up here. What if they follow you there? Then we'll deal with that problem later. I mean, why do all these heroes worry about all this stuff when it hasn't even happened yet? Well, try it, and see whether it works. Yeah, that's true. Actually, I am not against the idea of terraforming the moon. I am because it's like, the moon. No, wait, that doesn't make sense. I guess I just assign a weird sentimentality for the moon, like it should be what it is. Back home, men have always dreamed of colonizing the moon and Mars. Here, a tree dreams of greening the twin moon. You know what, that actually sounds quite cool. Kay admitted. Hopefully Stella sees it your way. Oh, she will, she just needs time to process the idea of portals to the moon. She's like that, her first reaction to any idea is to say no. Usually. I've seen Stella enough to know that her first choice is to do nothing, or hide. This part of her, she still took a while to undo, and in some ways, I really resonated with that. Stella, as predicted, agreed to the idea a week later, but after suitable preparations were made. For now, she continued her attempts to challenge the demon's astral path from the top of my tower tree, as she felt she could still make improvements to her technique. She tried repeatedly, and at one point, she actually succeeded in interfering with one single transmission. She wasn't sure what happened though. At the same time, Lumuf and the team of Valthorns on the western continent continued to hunt the demons. We witnessed a few rifts, and the rifts are actually vulnerable weak points. I did not activate my avatar ability, as the heroes were also fighting along. I did not want to reveal the full scope of my avatar powers to them. So, we allowed the other level 100 plus Valthorns to lead the battles with the champions. They needed the experience and the levels to prepare them for the real thing. Lumoof and Edna mainly played a supporting role, and often just stayed back. Kay, of course, understood this. As for the heroes, they thought it was just kinda weird. They, of course, could not really understand how slow normal people leveled when compared to them. They claim they get it, but they don't feel and live how slowly it takes for any regular person to level up. With their divine blessings, they usually just need a champion or two to gain a level. Demonic ogres and giant ogres were actually pretty pleasant to fight. They fought very much like regular humans, only with exceptional strength and power, and they also had a few skills. This went on for about 2 months, and during this time my ships and Hyperion also finally got into their position. Near, but not too near. I wasn't sure what gimmick this Demon King would have. Maybe it'll just cut off the world's magical communication network again. Hopefully we don't get that. Every day, Stella would recharge the void batteries, and kept battling the demonic paths. It didn't seem to make any impact on the number of demons, but she gained levels even from failing, so there was no real reason to stop. Then the path glowed brightly. It's coming. Stella wasn't afraid, so she tried again, this time with everything. She wanted to see whether she could disrupt the path so that the Demon King couldn't properly enter the world. Her void energies formed a shovel and attempted to cover the path of light that cut through the void forest. The path glowed, and little sparks of flames lit up along the path. She attempted to put out one of the flames, and she managed to cause one of them to dim slightly. The path glowed, and then seemed to bend at where the light was dimmer. Then, a glowing ball of light appeared and moved quickly along the path. Stella held on and used her void mana and attempted to mess with the path. It was either now or never. She pushed, and her void mana caused the path of light to dim ever so slightly. The glowing ball, however, smashed into her void mana at full speed, and from the skies above, a void energy shockwave hurled right at Stella. I immediately wrapped my roots around her to protect her, and created multiple wooden shields. The void energy shockwave smashed through my shields, but thankfully, I had many layers of them, and they were stopped. Stella was safe, but shaken by how suddenly it happened. Fuck that. On the western continent, my sensors detected the rift energies gathered at a particular location, but then it shifted and moved at the very last minute, like a car that made a last-minute swerve. Demon King Bagradva descended. It appeared right over a river, and the water where the Demon King descended instantly vaporized. Through Lumoof, I could feel its presence. It was like a hot fire. It didn't appear where we wanted it to be, but now we had to lure it to the few designated battlefields across the western continent. The heroes knew it was coming too. Well, Colette said, and then, a magical gate appeared right next to him. Chung walked right through, fully armed and equipped. Shall we get with the plan? Prabhu and Hafiz both nodded. Chung passed the other 3 heroes some stick-like artifact, then took a glance at Edna and Lumoof. So you two are the supporting fighters? Lumoof smiled. Yes. Hope we are not much of a bother. Chung shrugged. Oh well, let's get with it. The heroes quickly moved to position, and they periodically activated their star mana forms. Our spies and scouts tracked the Demon King's movement, and it seemed to have picked up the heroes' location and moved towards them. This was a good sign, since it meant it wasn't intelligent enough to recognize the trap. Either that, or it would learn from this experience and not fall for it the next time. More crucially, through Lumoof, I called my Valthorns together and I spoke to them. I've sent them to war many times, but few as risky as this. Perhaps, only the war with K. My faithful Valthorns, once again I call on you to fight the Demon King, and this time, through Lumoof, I will be right at your side with my full strength. I do not intend to lie that all of you will be safe. You've seen for yourself those who have sacrificed their lives in earlier battles, and I make no guarantees for your survival. We will go to war with the Demon King, whose powers we do not fully comprehend. Though risky and many will die, it is a step we must take. Only through challenging the Demon King itself, we can gain the powers needed to stand our own feet, and stop our world's toxic dependence on heroes. Everyone present nodded. Kay merely listened, as one of those who would play a supporting role. She would not join the fight. Not now. First we beat the Demon King, then we break this cycle of destruction. Only then, peace will truly come to our world. Through Lumoof, I nodded. We all know the plan, so let's do it. Let's bomb the Demon King. They roared. Dash. The Valthorns split up. They all had their part to play. Lumoof immediately joined the heroes in a pre-built fortress. This time, it was dug out of the ground itself. There was no point to above-ground structures that would be vaporized by laser beams, unless specially enchanted. It is moving as predicted. Each flare and use of star mana powers, it adjusted its position and direction. The scouts explained. The heroes had their own monitoring artifacts, and archmages like Prabhu and Colette had magical farsight. Chung, being the archer, had a set of magical birds that could spy for him. So, time to show off what you've been working on? Prabhu asked. Chung nodded. Yup. At a large empty clearing, he pulled out a large contraption that seemed to unfurl itself into an array of massive ballistas. Prabhu just stared. Wait, you built a huge ballista? Yup. But not just any regular ballista. This is a combination weapon of at least 20 hero item equivalents. Sadly, only single use. Use it once and it'll break apart. This is your plan. It's very, very difficult to make a combination weapon, mind you. Had to work around the stupid Hero Forge restrictions. Chung complained. What about you guys? Did you make the mecha Zords that you wanted? Prabhu shook his head. Nope. We just built a large number of magical batteries and healing devices, all around this continent. We're not going to repeat the earlier mistake of taking on the Demon King without preparation. Good. Chung nodded. Pray that it is enough. You're not the type to pray. The Demon King and its horde of ogres crossed one of the designated battlefields. We've rigged the place with so many magical crystals that it should cause some harm. All of the crystals were hidden underground, and made to be magically linked such that they cause all the crystals nearby to detonate simultaneously. Burying them was hard work, and it took months of my druid's time. We activated the crystals, and Alka waited for news. He was like a scientist who's waiting to see how his invention performed against the real thing. He was excited, stressed, and just a big bundle of nerves. We felt a sudden pulse, and the battlefield exploded. Our scouts watched from afar, but the Demon King was unharmed. There was a huge red sphere that protected the floating Demon King. It was a massive Demon King, and had a rhino-shaped head and a big, buff body with a dark maroon hide. A glowing tattoo covered its entire body. The Demon King held up a large flaming axe made out of flesh and metal on one of its thick arms, and roared. The earth shook, as massive chunks of rocks were lifted from the ground, and then melted into round spheres of lava. With those molten balls of lava, it was used to bomb the land in its path. This detonated or destroyed the crystals that were hidden in the ground. Ah darn. It was smart enough to destroy the land in front to eliminate any traps. We had to move on to the next stage. Our ranged weapons. We had limited ability here. The only truly ranged weapon we had in the area was Hytrerion, and an assortment of middle-range weapons like super large ballistas and other similar classes of weapons. The Demon King has a shield or barrier ability of some kind, and it looked like it's better for us to use our ranged weapons during the fight with the Demon King. The shield was most probably rechargeable, so if we were to use them now, we would just waste our weapons and traps. Therefore, we decided to just wait as the Demon King approached. The heroes too got ready. They had their own weapons and traps too, and they understood enough. Well, time to do it again. Prabhu said, as his body shimmered from the glow of star mana. The four heroes all transformed, their bodies surrounded by their unique star mana armor. The Demon King approached closer. The heroes and Demon King were now in combat distance, and it raised its axe up high. That instant, both Stella and myself felt the fabric of space twisted. All the rifts moved, and it now appeared above the Demon King itself. The astral path burned with a strange light. At that moment, the rifts twisted and expanded. Then the heads of monsters appeared from the rift. These were large as champions, maybe even more. There was no notification, but Lumuf quickly used Inspect on the giant monsters that appeared. Summons of Bagradva, the Demon Worm. Summons of Bagradva, the Demon Fox. Summons of Bagradva, the Demon Hawk. The three monsters that appeared quickly split up. The hawk soared, while the Demon Worm immediately went into the ground. The fox landed smoothly next to the Demon Shaman King, and the fox also roared. I am the archer, so I'll go for the hawk. Chung immediately moved to his large ballista and the ballista glowed. Wait, should we discuss this? Prabhu said as he activated a magical shield. Colette and Hafiz both looked a little lost, but the ground started shaking. Hafiz, the paladin or knight, activated a shield ability, as the ground tore apart. The worm had started to engage. Edna looked over at Lumuf and the rest of the Valthorns. Well, it's already started. Shall we? Lumuf nodded and through him, the avatar activated. I immediately could sense where the worm was, my tree's root senses. It would be the easiest to destroy. Heroes, I'll handle the worm. Lumuf glowed and transformed into a tree, and instantly we flooded the ground around us with roots. From our experience with demonic worms and centipedes, the roots would effectively disable the worms from tunneling. The worm moved quickly, but the roots extended and chased after it. We created multiple giant trees everywhere, and beneath the ground, the roots of these trees formed a cage. Underground, my roots attacked the worm and found it had thick shells. Yet, my roots broke through easily, and I unleashed a barrage of root strikes that skewered the worm underneath. The worm compressed, and then detonated with a small boom. However, my roots were able to withstand the underground explosion. The demon shaman king immediately turned and faced myself and Lumuf, and it charged at us immediately, instead of the heroes. Edna got in position. All right. She charged her shield with her mana, and then waited. The demon shaman king's burning fire axe came crashing down and there was a huge wall of flames. Edna activated her shield, and the shield glowed in white. The axe landed, but it did not break. Edna stamped her feet then. My roots immediately wrapped around her leg and supported her. I felt her drain mana from my roots, as her shield glowed and grew even larger. The axe didn't get through, and her shield released an energy blast. It hit the demon shaman king right in the chest. It didn't really hurt it, there was a reddish layer of magical protection around the demon king. There was a look on the demon shaman king's face, but I wasn't sure what it was. The demon king was massive, and it was way larger than Edna. Perfect for root strikes. The larger the body, the more places I can hit. Roots flew from the ground and smashed into the demon shaman king's reddish magical shield. At the same time, Edna charged ahead with both shield and spear. Edna's spear glowed and she stabbed the demon shaman king. Her spear met the demon king's shield. The magical energies from the tip of Edna's spear hummed and clashed with the red energy shield in huge sparks of light and color, and she pushed. The demon king's fiery axe came down, but rather than dodge it, Edna took it head on, her spear active, and activated her domain skill, Duty Beyond Life and Death. Her body instantly glowed in a faint yellow, and the axe smashed into her arm. There was an explosion around her, but the buckler on her arm did not break. Her ability allowed her to absorb the demon king's attack. I thought I saw her faintly smile when her domain skill activated. The demon pulled the axe back, and hacked again. But Edna had abandoned defense altogether, and she retaliated with a spear stab. I helped with more root strikes through the immobile Lumuf. The spear landed a few more hits and then shattered. She took out another spear from her magical pocket space. How does she take the attack like that? Prabhu seemed surprised but took the chance to activate more magical spells on the demon fox. Hafiz, the knight hero, charged ahead with his glowing star mana sword and attempted to slash the demon king. The hero's sword met the energy shield. The star mana energies on the sword sparkled and then, the demon's shield cracked. Hafiz pushed and the shield shattered. The demon king took attacks from myself, Edna and Hafiz once the shield was done. The sword from the hero caused a cut across its massive body, my barrage of root strikes and Edna's spear stab caused small holes along its chest. It roared and the tattoo throughout its body glowed. The wounds we made closed, and the fiery axe moved autonomously and hacked the knight hero. Edna took full advantage of her near immortality to help block the demon king's attack with her magical shield. The shield cracked and broke apart, and then met her arms. She parried it, despite her relatively small size, and then stabbed the demon king. The knight hero ducked below the axe and landed a few star mana powered cuts on the demon king. He activated some kind of magical slash skill, and his sword flashed. He chopped off the demon king's arm. Through Lumuf, I immediately called on my roots to wrap around the demon king, and I felt the roots connect and touch the demon king's skin. I attempted to drain its mana. The demon king glowed. I knew then it was one of those area clearing abilities. Shields up. Colette and Prabhu shouted, as they activated magical barriers. Chung immediately stopped engaging the demon hawk and with a magical step, retreated next to Colette. Hafiz activated a magical armor that coated his entire body, but even so, he retreated. The demon king emitted a bright flash of light, followed by an energy blast that incinerated everything around it. Well, except Edna. She ignored the attack and just stabbed the demon king. The energy blast burned some of her equipment and singed her skin lightly, but it quickly regenerated. When the bright light subsided, the demon king's dismembered arm had regenerated. Edna's spear was vaporized by the attack, but then, she punched the demon king with her energy-infused fists. She shouted, "I am not dealing damage. What the hell is that overpowered ability?" The heroes shouted in unison, clearly unaware of Edna's short-term combat immortality. Still, despite her multiple punches, those punches didn't do much damage. It merely annoyed the Demon King. Edna was quite similar to me, in the sense that she has tremendously high defensive abilities, but her offensive abilities lagged far behind. Hafiz immediately ran ahead and summoned 2-star mana swords. He threw one of them at Edna. Edna was the only one nearby, and she grabbed the sword. She slashed and managed to land a few cuts. Then the sword ran out of star mana and turned to dust. The Demon King punched, and this time, Edna was knocked back really far. She may not take damage, but they could still push her. The Demon Fox took the chance to rejoin its master. I immediately mentally spoke to the heroes. Let Edna do the tanking. You guys keep attacking the Demon King. They nodded, and the 2 archmages charged up a bluish energy ball, and fired it. The blue energy ball transformed into a glowing piece of ice and smashed right into the Demon King's regenerated shields. The shield instantly shattered. Edna moved in. Edna pulled out a magical ice sword from Arya, and slashed. The ice sword landed 5 hits, and then shattered. She pulled out another set of spears, and stabbed the Demon King when the energy shield was down. I also followed up with a few root strikes. Once again, I attempted to wrap the Demon King with my vines. Our attacks did some damage, but it was Hafiz's star mana sword slash that dealt most of the damage. But I could tell the heroes were at least impressed that we were holding on and could even contribute. Around the same time, I immediately got my mid-range and long-range weapons to be ready. Hyperion got into position, and a few of my other Valthorns prepared the magical artillery, loaded with an arsenal of crystal bombs. The hawk in the sky launched thunderbolts. Its dark red feathers were lava and lightning combined. Chung's magical arrows chased the hawk through the sky, but Chung also tried to launch an attack at the Demon King every now and then. The hawk took a hit, and it crashed on the ground. Right before it flew off, my roots immediately surged out of the ground and wrapped it, and attempted to drain as much of its mana. The hawk struggled. Chung immediately charged up a magical arrow and blasted the hawk through the head. The hawk disintegrated to magical dust. We were left with the fox and the Demon King. The fox roared and blasted out an energy wave. It leapt towards Edna, its claws armed and ready. The fox clawed and slashed Edna, but it didn't hurt her at all. However, it freed up the Demon King from Edna's annoying presence, and the Demon King took the chance to charge at the rest of the heroes. The Demon King's shield was back again. As it charged, it attempted to move the earth around the battlefield. I felt the Demon King's magic tug at the ground strongly, but my roots had covered the entire battlefield, and together with Lumuf, we fought back and kept the ground stable. It roared in frustration, and then used lightning instead. Lightning from its axe surged towards the heroes. Both Colette and Prabhu somehow automatically activated magical shields and the lightning axes smashed into the shield. It exploded and both the archmages were knocked back. Yet, the same attack also gave Hafiz an opening. The knight hero slashed the Demon King from the back, and left 2 large gashes that ran down its massive body. It roared, and glowed again. This time, I felt a stronger twist of magic in the air. The 2 archmages were a little drowsy from being knocked back, and they got up. They immediately put up shields. Hafiz's body glowed in armor and he too slashed again. Edna continued to battle with the fox, and she was winning. The fact that the fox could not hurt Edna meaningfully meant she ignored her defense and just kept on attacking the fox. I wrapped the Demon King with my roots again. Its glowing body twisted and struggled. This time, it turned to face Lumuf. It shot out a focused beam towards Lumuf. I activated all the shields as I could manage, and the beam pierced through almost all of it. But my shields was sufficient to deflect the beam slightly off-center, and merely hit Lumuf right in the leg. It vaporized his legs, and my roots immediately stepped in to start healing the wounds. I would have to mend it later. Lumuf yelped in pain, but he grit his teeth. We can continue. He insisted. My roots managed to stop the bleeding and started repairs. My roots entered the wound and supported his body momentarily, but permanent repair will need to happen after the battle. The Demon King stopped glowing and the gashes healed, again. Yet, the change in the magic in the air was clear. Each regeneration drained it. It swung its axe around like a hurricane, and surrounded itself with a fiery tornado. It activated more magic and the earth itself turned to lava. The lava burned my roots, and I quickly flooded my roots with water drawn from a river not too far away. The ground turned into a mix of lava and water. The ground started to release steam as the water evaporated, and the lava cooled. The Demon King stomped the ground, and the ground shattered. Pieces of hardened dried lava rock cracked out of the floor. The heroes activated a range of ice spells, as they pulled moisture out of the team and formed them into icicles, and launched them at Demon King. This also helped clear out the mist. It was then I noticed Chung's contraption was already destroyed. Some of the dirt and lava rocks broke free from my weakened roots, and these dirt chunks transformed into lava axes mid-air. The Demon King magically hurled them towards Lumuf, Edna, and also the heroes. The sky swirled above as the heroes also activated some kind of blizzard spell. Ice shards started to rain down, and these shards honed in on the Demon King. They smashed into the Demon King's red shield. These ice shards didn't crack the shield. The lava axes met one of my wooden shield skills and exploded. At that time, the Demon King raised both its arms, and then the sky parted. Edna dodged the lava axes. She made sure to avoid the places where the ground was soft. The lava may not kill her, but she could get trapped and be effectively disabled. A massive deep red fireball came crashing down. Fuck. The heroes screamed as they grouped together and then activated various shields. I instantly surrounded Lumuf with layers and layers of wooden shields and barriers. The entire battlefield exploded, and it destroyed all my giant attendant trees. But the heroes survived. All 4 of them huddled together. Only one shield remained. Had they used their shields separately, they would have died. For Lumuf, the fires burned through most of the shields, but thankfully my avatar mode meant he shared my fire resistance. Had it been any other element, Lumuf would be in trouble. Yet the explosion left the Demon King frozen in a daze. It stood motionless. This was Edna's moment, again. Edna immediately took out more spears magically and stabbed the Demon King. Her attack snapped all of us to action. I called on Hytririan and my mid-ranged Valthorns to start their barrage, while I also activated more root strikes. The heroes attacked. From afar, my crystal bombs zoomed across the skies and then landed around the Demon King. They exploded on impact. The heroes' magical spells landed on the motionless Demon King and left multiple wounds. My root strike pierced through some of the weakened parts of the Demon King's skin. The Knight Hero left more cuts and gashes across its body, and then attempted to behead the Demon Shaman King. His star mana sword stopped halfway. The Demon King glowed. Everyone retreated except Edna. She went in, activated her Court of the Deitree and surrounded herself in wooden armor, and started punching. Her fists were shaped like spears, augmented by the wooden casing around her. The Demon King regenerated, again. Edna punched, and the Demon King smashed Edna with its molten club. The rest of my Valthorns, those in the level 120s to 130s, launched ranged attacks where they could. Rune and Johann, who was initially located a distance away to coordinate the mid-ranged weapons, now came to join the battle. Their attacks didn't do much. All of us lacked the firepower to deal game-ending damage, as our attacks stopped by the shield that came back online. Chung launched a rain of magical star mana arrows at the Demon King and the arrows slammed into the Demon King's back. The torrent of star mana arrows cracked the shields. Its shields are down, Chung said. The 2 archmages launched magical energy blasts, and reactivated their blizzard spell. This time, the ice shards slammed right to its body. The Demon Shaman King raised its axe, and this time, a rift appeared in the sky. A demon dragon came out. Summon of Bagradva. Demon dragon. The dragon roared and shot huge beams. Focus on the Demon King. Chung shouted. It's already dying. The dragon immediately landed on the ground with a slam, and attempted to attack the heroes. But before it could do so, my roots surged out of the ground and constricted the dragon. Thousands of vines and roots emerged and pulled the dragon down. I drained the dragon's mana, and Lumuf coughed as the dragon's energy flowed through his body. The heroes kept attacking the Demon King. The Demon King's axe slammed right into Hafi's shield and cracked it. The ground shook slightly. My regenerated roots absorbed the vibrations. The steam turned to mist, as the hero's blizzard reduced the temperature greatly. Hafi's glowing star mana sword slashed a few more times, and finally, with a great glowing slash, he finally beheaded the Demon Shaman King. The severed head immediately sprouted a snake-like body. What the shit, it's not dead yet. Chung screamed in frustration, and used star mana blast. The energy blast missed as the head slithered away quickly. I activated my roots and attempted to wrap it. I'll hold it. Take a shot once it stops. My roots wrestled with the snake body of the Demon King's head. It was strong, but I was just a bit stronger. My roots were twisted and it stopped. I tried to crush the body but couldn't. All I could do was hold it in its place. Colette and Prabhu launched a combined super dense ice blob, and it exploded right at the head. The head turned to ice, and then the entire head and the snake body disintegrated. The summoned dragon also immediately disintegrated. At this time, we felt a magical pulse coming from the original Demon King body. We knew what it was. It's gonna blow. No. My roots immediately wrapped the original body, and pierced it. It was weaker now, and my roots searched for the core. We found it. The demon core. I wrapped it with huge amounts of roots and vines, and started to drain the mana. Lumuf coughed and winced in pain as his body endured the huge amounts of demonic mana and other kinds of weird energies from the demon core. I felt my head hurt, and I felt like I got hit with a jackhammer, and then fed a few bottles of alcohol. Both drunk and dizzy. Was this mana poisoning? But I kept on draining mana from the demon core, and then the pulse finally stopped. Demon King Bagradva has been slain. You have gained 9 levels. You are now level 208. Yet, immediately after the notification, I felt the effects of the mana poisoning sink in, and I felt like I needed to sleep. For a short while, C-160 tree ways to the end. Year 191 continued. The battle was over, and I rested for a few days. Lumuf, thankfully, recovered from the damage far faster than I did. It seemed that in avatar mode, all the mana was transferred to my main body, so I bore the brunt of the mana intoxication. Patrick and the rest of my artificial minds assisted to regulate the excess mana, and stored them in the potato batteries. We will come back to it someday. I hope. Edna had to take a long nap and spent days doing nothing but sleep. Though her ability gave her combat immortality, once the one-day timer was up, she was pretty much a puppet whose strings were cut. She could barely walk or move. But it was worth it. She gained a lot of levels, and hit level 165, and gained even more abilities with it. Her new ability, Regenerating Guardians, granted her the ability to create 5 guardians that shared her toughness. Lumuf too gained some levels, but most of it only enhanced his connection with me such that he could withstand more of my power. But more importantly, was those that we wanted to groom. Rune, Johann, Alka, and Stella all gained levels from the victory for their contributions to the combat effort. Rune, Johann and Alka were now in the higher level 140s. It's likely that we could breach the level needed to obtain their domains by the time of the next Demon King. No, more importantly, I returned to my notifications. I activated the menu and instantly a long list of notifications appeared. You have gained 9 levels. You are now level 208. Level 200 grants minor Pantheon powers. Minor Pantheon powers are dependent on subdomain choices. Further skills once a subdomain power has been chosen. Subdomain power choices you may choose one out of 3 choices below. Subdomain choice. Tree of Life. This choice leads you down the path of regeneration, evolution, immortality and life creation. Each of your main body and your cloned bodies gains significant regenerative abilities. This choice allows the creation of cloned bodies under the Tree of Clones. Your trees gain the ability to adapt to all kinds of environments, and terraforming ability. Closing square bracket. This subdomain choice will lead to creation of life, greater monster minions, evolution alteration, healing, endurance, regeneration, clones and multi-body skills in the future. This subdomain grants the Pantheon power. Immortal tokens. Domain level individuals who join your Pantheon can be remade and regenerated even if they are killed. On death or destruction, their souls will return to you for respawn. The respawn time depends on how strong they are. Stronger deities require longer respawn times. However, choosing this ability will mean the death of these Pantheon members will no longer grant Titan souls, and you will not be able to gain any stored experience from their familiars. These domain holders can still die if all your Tree of Clones and your main body are destroyed. Choosing this subdomain also unlocks the Trees of Clones. You may now create clones in addition to your own. The number of main body clones increases with level. You cannot die unless all cloned bodies are destroyed. You can regenerate any destroyed bodies after a small recovery time. Each clone body and your main body are magically intertwined and you may move items and people between them, subject to a distance-adjusted mana cost, with a discounted or minimal cost for Ionic-related items, classes and individuals and also familiar holders. Clones initially take the form of a basketball-sized seed that can be transported and planted elsewhere. Tree of Clones may be placed anywhere and naturally terraforms their environment. They do not need to be physically linked as their connection is through the system. Subdomain choice. Will of the world. This choice takes the first step in merging with the world that you are in. This choice removes any distance or depth restrictions for roots and trees. You will thus be able to spread your roots anywhere in the world, through oceans and under them. You may also create underwater trees. This choice leads to terrain and elemental magics and abilities, significantly improved offense and damage for you and those touched by your powers, creation of elementals, weather control, terrain shaping, and wielding the land as your weapon. This subdomain grants the Pantheon power, strength of the world. This grants significant stats and strength boost, at least hero tier, improved elemental resistance and enhanced abilities with the 4 main elements. Pantheon members also gain the ability to terraform and gain ability to temporarily transform into elementals. Choosing this subdomain unlocks elements of the world. This is a path where you gain access to the controls of this world. This includes more accurate astral maps, ability to move the world in the void sea, bend space and distance around the world and its neighbors. Subdomain choice. Crown of Magic. You gain the ability to use all kinds of spells without requiring skills or classes, and simultaneously generate star mana, void mana, blood mana and any other mana type you discover. This path leads to global and multi-world spells and abilities. You will also be able to override any hero item restrictions and use them to their full potential. Your magical laboratories and sensors gain increased sensitivity and functionality. Your main tree can now learn magic just by sight, and certain types of hero abilities. You can also grant magical abilities to a limited number of individuals. This subdomain grants the Pantheon power, a land of magic. Domain members can access and store their unique mana types in areas where your trees are present. They may also pre-cast and store skills and spells in the land itself, thus skipping any casting time and mana cost restrictions. Your trees will function as magical amplifiers for their abilities. Tree of Magics. You may create great magical trees. Each of these magical trees can generate a choice of star mana, void mana, blood mana, or any other mana type discovered. These great magical trees can weave and cast multiple magical enchantments that apply over an area as large as a continent. Magical trees can significantly enhance existing ley lines, link distant ley lines together, cast wide-scale protective spells and interfere with other magic. Crown of Magic also allows you to forge magical items without restrictions. These weapons and items can generate their own mana, act as the locus of area enchantments and amplify magical powers. You are also able to fuse Titan souls with deity class or higher magical items to create unlimited class weapons that can grow, gain their own levels and transform into weapons that can exceed even the gods. I sat down and looked at the 3 choices. Tree of Life allowed me to bypass the avatar limitation and free up Lumoof to truly be my mobile avatar. It also pretty much makes me functionally immortal, especially if I can get my seeds off-world, to the other 2 worlds, or any uninhabited world. This was a good choice for expanding to the demon worlds and the other continents, and is essentially a step towards an intridimensional empire. A true multi-world force. I could, through this ability, even take on demon kings on other worlds, thus speeding up our leveling speed. The Pantheon ability also made it less risky to put any lesser domain holders like Lumoof, Rune, Alka right before the Demon King. That said, this ability was quite useless with Edna, since she could already take all the damage. The second choice, Will of the World, had the main benefit of bypassing all distance restrictions all over the world. With this, I could invade all the continents at the same time. That said, this choice did not allow me to spread my roots to the other worlds, and my main body still remained the single point of failure. But the boosted stats to all my domain wielders meant this ability synchronized really well with Edna's duty beyond life and death. She could endure all the hits the Demon King could dish out and then keep dealing damage with her significantly improved offensive abilities. From the battle with the Demon King, it was quite obvious that the heroes did a lot of the damage, if not most of it. Even my root strikes, which were generally super effective against demons, did not do exceptional damage against the Demon King. If I wanted to kill a Demon King with myself and the rest of my Pantheon members quickly, this seemed like a decent choice. It also negated and weakened a range of the Demon King's elemental attacks, so it wasn't a total trade-off against survivability either. The last choice led us down the path of magic. It seemed to overlap with Stella's void magic. Perhaps this meant I could amplify her power to actually deny the Demon King, and the global magic suggested I could also use them to hide the world or redirect the Demon Kings. This choice enhanced survivability indirectly through the stored spells and skills, which felt like an exploitable mechanic. The growing weapons that had no limits also felt exploitable, though I needed more time to think about a good way to abuse it. The ability to grant hero tier magical abilities was also an interesting choice. Again, I didn't know what exactly that meant until I've used it. Did it mean I can functionally create heroes? I could link ley lines together with the ability, so that was also a very good interaction with my dungeon ability, which would allow me to create even stronger dungeons for my Valthorns. This path had the most unknowns, because I didn't know what magic was capable of at that level. This choice potentially had the means to break the cycle through some kind of great magic, or perhaps, it's possible to seal off the entire world from the demons, buying us some time to grow and recover. Alternatively, the enhanced magic could possibly interfere with the Demon King's void magic. All these choices were interesting, and I brought the matter to my senior Valthorns for their input. Edna was first to answer. Honestly, can we delay it until Stella, Rune, Johann and Alka all gain their domains? If we could see what domain abilities they receive, we could choose what we lacked. Lumoof nodded at Edna's suggestion. I must say I agree with that assessment. We really don't know enough. Kay and Stella, who were both present, stated their case. We can extrapolate the powers from what they have now. It's likely Stella's domain will be some kind of void ability, so perhaps Stella can create even more powerful portals. Johann nodded. I like the regenerating and immortal ability though. It meant we could pretty much fight the Demon King with not a care in the world since we can't die. We can actually win the Demon Kings purely by attrition, a really interesting reversal of the situation. I believe this seems to be a long-term idea, and plays well with Stella's void powers. We could send a clone to the demon world. The will of the world is immediately more useful, though. It would functionally enhance our grip on the world. Alka said. The lack of depth restrictions meant we could dig even deeper, and even below the heat. There must be treasures and more lost cities we have not seen. Kay then added. Doesn't it mean Eons trees can be everywhere? That meant he could use his beetles everywhere. Stella paused and then added. What if all of this is just an illusion of choice? That all these choices eventually result in the same thing, even if the journey to achieve those choices is different. Take how the Tree of Clones essentially extended Eon's range, the same way the will of the world does. That does make some sense. Alka nodded. If so, should we think of this as which ability we can't replicate or substitute with other abilities or spells? If a few of us will eventually reach and acquire our own domains, then some of our domains must be able to substitute these skills. Is that an argument for Tree of Life? Since immortality is not easily replicated. Lumoof asked. I thought it didn't really say anything. I think the immortality ability has substitutes, like my own. Edna's duty beyond life and death was case in point. Then it's the underground ability. Alka said. The will of the world. We could find all sort of stuff. Maybe there's a secret even at the center of the planet. Kay smacked her face. Given what I've seen, I am actually afraid you might be right. I am sure there are magical abilities for that. It is possible that your domain ability as a scientist may grant you the ability to find such treasures hidden beneath the ground, regardless of what's in your way. Edna quipped. That's certainly not the only use. Alka protested. Merging with the world sounds like Eon will be the planet itself. The magical ability to cast global spells. Stella then suggested. We should take that. It sounded like it worked well with my abilities and would improve my chances to delay or deny the Demon King. A mage with domain could possibly do such spells too. If we think of Demon Kings as domain class, we have seen Demon Kings use global abilities. No, actually, are you trying to wriggle out of having to get your own domain? Kay looked at Stella. Stella shook her hands in protest. In the long run, all these choices probably make little difference. Stella said. But looking at the medium term, over the next few decades, these choices would affect how we survive the Demon Kings. Johann nodded. I think the Tree of Life makes good sense. If none of us can die, we can all aim and plan. Doesn't that just trivialize death? I am sure the regeneration time of a domain holder will be quite long. Maybe years or decades. Kay said. This world does seem to take inspiration from games and ancient myths. And it's not unusual for ancient evils or great powers to recover from destruction over very long periods. That reminded me of so many stories that started with the rebirth of the evil god. Oh, so we may not die, but we waste a lot of time. Time that may save lives in other worlds. I am against the magic route. Rune said. I feel that once a sufficient number of us can take on the Demon King, and with immortality, we can effectively continue fighting the Demon King. No, fighting the Demon King is even better since we become stronger with each fight. It's a risk-free route. The earlier civilizations were destroyed after a long war of attrition. Yes, but we will have to keep fighting forever. The magical route essentially offers a chance to close this issue by blocking us. No. The magical route also means we may have spells that create larger, more sustainable portals. With that, we may be able to invade the demonic world. That still sounds like playing defense. Rune responded. Being immortal allows us to go on the offense. We don't know that, Stella answered. What if we invade the other worlds and find that there's no solution there? The gods clearly have tried something, but they too failed in destroying the demons. Hiding may well be the only true way to avoid this fight. Until when? The ranger responded. We cannot hide forever. What if merging with the world allows both? Alka wondered, as he tried to steer the conversation away. There must be something more to this merging to the world thing. If Eon becomes the world, Eon may also be unkillable. With that solid foundation, we'll just need time to have Stella and the rest of the Void Mages gain their own domains. A really long time, mind you. Stella protested. Void magic isn't so easily taught. He doesn't have a point. We have 20 Void Mages in your Void school, and Eon can give you upgraded classes. Alka said. Kay paused and took the conversation in another direction. Eon, is it possible that at level 250, you may actually encounter these choices again? I thought back to my level 150 domain choices. Nature, Spirit, and Astral. I chose Nature, then. As I thought about it, I thought it may be more accurate that both Will of the World and Tree of Life are essentially paths that went deeper along the path of the nature aspect. Living magic seemed to take a detour through magic, taking a bit from both Spirit and Astral. So I answered Key's question. Not exactly. These level 200 choices were not what I got for my level 150. Edna circled back. I stand by the earlier suggestion. Hold on the choice until more of us get our domains. There's no time limit, right? Everyone took a look at Lumuf, who remained mostly silent. Lumuf shrugged. Don't look at me. I am Eon's #1 faithful, and if it's me, I believe in Eon's wisdom to choose.